The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Over the next 3.5 hours, we're going to be welcoming some brilliant speakers to share their knowledge with us on the very hot topic of service intelligence. And together we'll explore what the future of IT service holds for us. I'm pleased to let you know that we're recording today's event and we will email the link to the recording and the presentations to you in the next day or so. Please feel free to listen back to the presentations at your leisure and even share them with your teams. We're keen to make today's live event as interactive as possible, so please do post any questions as we go along. Simply type them in your webinar control panel and we'll ask the speakers for their thoughts in the Q&A sessions at 1:45 and 3:15. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to our esteemed host for the day, SDI's Chief Value and Innovation Officer, David Wright. Good afternoon, David, and over to you.
Hello, Emma. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everybody, and yeah, it's great to be part of this, I think. Welcome to today's SCI virtual event on service intelligence, and thank you for spending your time with us. My name is David Wright, as Emma mentioned. I'm hosting today, so I'll be the hosting right the way through. And we've assembled some really great speakers who will sort of share their thoughts on current and emerging technologies and what considerations you should be aware of as you explore, develop, and improve your service capability. And what we mean by that in this event is by leveraging AI ops, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, self-heal, and predictive infrastructure. And what all that can offer, what it can offer us in relation to service intelligence. So that's better prediction, better prevention capabilities, deeper holistic data insights, and improved service resiliency. Thank you to our event partner, Micro Focus, for sponsoring today's event. It's always great to have Micro Focus involved in this kind of event, especially considering the topic, and we'll be hearing from them a little bit later. As Emma's mentioned, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions throughout today's presentation, so we certainly encourage you to post your questions in the console at any point during today's proceedings, and we'll take a look and answer as many as we can. As we go through, as Emma's mentioned, there is sort of some limited time for questions, and we've got some points during today for questions specifically, but we'll try and weave those in, and any that we miss, we can pick up post this event and send them on to the listeners via email. So, yeah, I'd like to introduce you then as our first speaker, Matt John. Now, Matt is head of Service Transformation UK at Devoteam, who specialise in a number of core services, including transformation services, agile, IT, cyber security, and the digital workplace. Welcome, Matt.
Hi guys, how is everybody today? Looking good?
Yeah, all good, thank you. And it's great to have you with us today. And I think you'll be discussing the importance of knowledge when building the foundations for the future. And of course, with all the data, the amount of data that we generate these days as individuals and indeed organizations, how knowledge supports the creation of wisdom. Why did you choose to talk specifically about that topic, Matt?
Well, I think it's really a bit of a combination of talking to a number of different clients over a number of different years, and I think there's some great discussions out there which talk about you know, we want to do kind of AI, we want to do automation, and they've kind of set up these initial projects. And I think that some of the things that I've noticed in the industry is that there's a real problem about getting the foundations right. So it's about trying to actually understand that, you know, in order for you want to progress and do the new technologies and see what it is, you need to kind of make sure that your foundation and back office is in order to ensure that you can kind of get the benefits realization at the front. And that's where I start to talk about, you know, about the wisdom, and then you put a bit of intelligence behind it, and then you can really kind of gather all of that knowledge together and deliver a good level of service.
Excellent. Well, that sounds really interesting, and I'm certainly interested in what you're going to say. So are our listeners are as well, which is fantastic. So Matt, without further ado then, if you can get your slides ready, just make sure they're ready and make sure they're in full screen. We're going to make you the presenter shortly, and if you can just accept that, and then over to you.
I've just accepted it, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen now.
Then let's see what comes through. There should be an option there to share your screen as well, Matt.
Yeah, I should have done that. So you should be able to see my screen, hopefully. Yep, it says I'm showing my screen.
Okay, maybe a little bit slow our end. I think I'm still got, no, that's fine. Yeah, we've got it. We've got it. I'm looking at the wrong screen. So fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So just to introduce myself, so my name is Matthew John. I'm the kind of head of service transformation at Devoteam. I've worked around in the service management framework for about 25 years, working with a number of different clients, which has given me a bit of knowledge and exposure to lots of different infrastructures, different operations, and also a number of different people that are on different journeys and different levels of those journeys, ranging from fairly small companies, but also all the way up to large, very, very large enterprise businesses that operate globally. So what I want to talk about today is trying to understand building that foundation to enable new technologies which support service intelligence. So a couple of things that I wanted to kind of push forwards first is if we can get to the screens. So there's a kind of fundamental difference between knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom. So I'm sure there's plenty of different examples that you'll see out there about knowledge and understanding that tomato is a fruit and all sorts. But I want to kind of bring it back to make it relevant to the parties on the call today. So around the knowledge is really the knowledge is that the customers need a fast, reliable service and delivers their needs to keep them satisfied. So it's a case of they have a requirement and you know what that requirement is to make them happy. Intelligence is looking at how you can actually provide that service effectively and use kind of like the intelligent service framework at an optimum cost level. Because obviously we know that C-level and all the rest of it, well, they want to make sure that they're actually delivering something. We're delivering something at an optimum cost and making sure customers are happy. And the real wisdom part starts to come through when you start really kind of talking about value. So there's a big focus around in the industry today, especially with the release around ITIL v4, which is starting to look at how value drivers are actually placed against the service. So where you can actually talk about value is actually delivering more than what the customer would expect, and actually be able to do that at a lower operational cost. And you're kind of starting to see the benefits realization from that. And I think that anybody who is working in operations management will always be told the same thing: I want you to do more with less. And I think that understanding those kind of three core aspects of understanding what the customer needs, being able to deliver, and then being able to deliver it really well, is some of the core fundamental frameworks of being able to kind of to progress across this journey. So as we start to look through, we can see within the IT operations world, it is massively complex. So, I don't envy anybody who's working as an operations manager, IT manager, or even in some respects a CIO, because there's lots of different things that are going out in the marketplace today. We've got DevOps, Lean IT, analytics, design thinking, serverless, containers, site reliability. There's a whole raft of things that are coming out. People who work in the technology operations sector at the moment, that is it's a real challenge to try and understand is what's relevant, what do I need, and how do I do this. And I think that understanding that core element around what ITIL v4 says is a definition of a service is about value. And this is the real key thing: delivering value and making sure that you're delivering against your outcomes. And that is a really kind of core message that we want to bring forwards to the fold, and one of the things I'm going to be talking about today. So as we kind of start to look at what our key issues are, I think any of the key issues that I've listed here, I'm sure there's plenty, these should not be new to anybody who works within IT and operations today. So there's always going to be challenges when you talk about budget for improvements. There's always going to be a case of going up to the CIO, CFO, and giving them a bit of an open cup to say, please, can I have some more? And that's always a bit of a challenge when you're trying to kind of understand, what value are they going to get from these budgets. There's definitely a lack of knowledge around some of the new technologies, and that's not a slight on anybody. I think it's because there's so much stuff going on, it's very difficult to kind of keep up to pace, and I think that kind of brings its own challenges. there is still an issue around the maturity of processes, and specifically around configuration and event. And some of those things are absolutely key when you start to talk about automation, AI, and data analytics, because it helps you get to that point of understanding what you can fix before it even becomes a problem. And I think that those are the kind of, that's definitely something that's quite key. Now, people talk about, oh, we got incident, problem, change, and that's all very mature. But when you start looking at the other processes or other functions within IT operations, that is definitely something that is causing some problems, because as I'll talk about in a bit, the whole aspect around configurational items and how that underpins a service still isn't very mature, and there are a number of businesses out there that still haven't managed to get this right yet. And that all filters into the service catalog. Now, understanding what services are out there and how that actually underpins things, and what data is used, what applications, and what infrastructure is used to support those service items is definitely something that is a challenge today, because I don't think a lot of people have really got a handle on this just yet. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to look at defining a service catalog and the challenges that go to in a moment. There's definitely a lot of manual workarounds and data repositories. There's Excel spreadsheets all over the place. There's Visio diagrams and goodness knows what else. And I kind of want to talk about this. I was talking to a group of guys who work in the DevOps space, and the development side of DevOps have actually really got ahead of the curve on kind of standard operations on this, where they've started to kind of bring some of their data repositories together so they can look at doing kind of improvements around certain applications. And that's something that is probably very prevalent across the industry today, that the dev guys seem to be a little bit ahead of the curve against operations. There's a lot of aspects around the organizational structure. It's not set up for kind of agile and DevOps and automation, etc. And I think that something definitely needs to be addressed. There's always going to be a resistance to change wherever you go, and it's about trying to kind of get people on board to kind of embrace that change to make things better. There is a certain elements around technology teams that they all talk in ones and zeros. The service management side of things have managed to do that translation piece, which is good, but it's not always as perfect as it could be. And the two kind of real core factors on this is poorly integrated tools and poorly implemented tools. And what I mean by this is that there are a lot of infrastructure around today is dotted around all over the place. You've got engineers who like this specific tool, you've got operations guys who like this specific tool, you've got data in this repository over there, it's not integrated very well. You might have heavily customized tool sets around your ITSM platform, and that's something that is starting to be changed, but I think that it's about, there is still a bit of an ethos in some areas which looks at, I want the tool to fit into my business model, rather than let's try and have a look at how to make our business model more effective so we can start using things out of the box. And I think that that is definitely a problem that I see in the industry today. So I wanted to look at around the data model, because I think that when we started talking about how to implement service intelligence, the data model is probably one of the key things to get right. So I've kind of drawn up a bit of a commonly seen data model today. I'm sure there's plenty more boxes at the top, but it's just really looking at the kind of core ones at the moment. So you've got user directory, process repositories, and they can be all over the shop. There may not be a centralized master repository, or there might be in some. They might have situations where you've got analytics and asset management may be connected, but they're not connected effectively with the tool suite. And, you know, there's a lot of manual kind of integrations. There might be some uploads from CSV files. There might be some, there might be some APIs going into different tool sets, which is great. But in some cases, there's no one clear picture of where all your data sits and how it all starts to connect together, and is the relationships there for the actual services and its complete understanding, and how that fits together. And trying to understand how all of this starts to fit together and what parts you actually need is going to be absolutely key when you start talking about, I want to implement automation. So the question would be, if you say, I want to implement automation, you say, okay, well, what do you want to implement, and what do you want to automate, and what is out there today, and how it connects? Those are the key things that we need to look at moving forwards. So I wanted to look at this part first, which is around a service catalog and why it's important. And this is a fundamental baseline of understanding the framework of how the business run today. So I was kind of looking at how to define this, and I've done this as a customer level, a business level, technical level, and also end user services. And I think that when we start talking about service catalog to some people, a lot of people initially go to it's a service request. That's not the case. It's not always the case. Even though the service catalog is the request catalog is actually part of the service catalog. We need to kind of define out the top level customer endpoint services and also the internal business level services that are the top level parent services that are defined across the business. So what I mean by that is a customer service, say for example, if you're working, if you've got a bank, they will have specific customer services that are the top line. It might be current accounts, it might be the ability to, pay at an ATM, or it might be kind of bill payments, whatever it might be. Those are the customer front end services that they value. That's what they see, that's what they care about, and that's all they want to know about. They don't really want to know about all the back ends that make that work. And then kind of contrast that, you've got your internal business level services, which would be stuff like HR, finance, facilities, payroll, etc. And those are the things that your customers, internal and external, will see, and that's what they want to deliver. Okay, that's what they want delivered to them. That's where they see their value. And from there, you then have your technical IT services or technology component level services that are delivering those customer and business level services. So this might be looking at, your monitoring solutions, your network as a service, your data centers, your portals, etc. And these have many subcomponents that sit underneath it that are technology powered services to enable your customer and business level services. And when we start talking about that data model aspect, there needs to be a link between all of these systems put together to start having a conversation about what you can automate or what you can actually export to the cloud, or what can you look at kind of making sure you've got a good, effective self-service. It's about trying to understand how all these points are put together and connected to make sure you're delivering your level of service. So if you want to kind of have if you look at Nationwide, for example, we're one of the first people to come up with a mobile application. Customers didn't really ask for it, they didn't really know it, they had a website, but they saw that there was a gap in the market and they said, right, do you know what, we're going to do a mobile app. They did a mobile app and it delivered an extra level of value to their services. Customers didn't particularly ask for it or demand it. It was a case of, we see value in delivering this. How are we going to do this? This is how we're going to do it, and these are the technology powered services that we need to do to deliver against that. So it's about going that extra mile and understanding about how all these core components fit and sit together. You then start to use your capabilities, which are the bars across the bottom, which enable those services to run. So you need resources, you need good skills, you need service desks, and there needs to be the consumable items as well, PCs, laptops, etc. And then there's the application and infrastructure services that underpin those. And there are plenty more capabilities that you can put against that as well. But it's about capabilities then enable your services to function, and your services are based across your IT level component services, which support your top end customer and business level services. So that's why it's absolutely critical that a service catalog is implemented, it's defined, and making sure that you've got an absolute top down and bottom up link between your services and all your component CIs and how those services are delivered across the board. So a customer level service may use 50 different IT services to enable that value for the client. This might give a slightly better view about how to integrate, and I know it looks very messy with all the lines, but it's about showcasing that a customer service like card payments, for example, will use multiple IT services, and there'll be multiple capabilities underneath each one of those services that deliver out. And all of those connections need to be in place to understand how that service is delivered, all of the core components, all of the data that is coming out of that, so you can analyze and then kind of being able to define the next level of value that is delivered to that to the customer at the front end, be it whether or not they're internal or external. So absolute key. It's very, very kind of confusing, I know, and there's lots of different lines pointed around different areas, but that's why you have tool sets to kind of start to integrate and map all of this together. But it's going to be very hard for you to kind of look at how do I do automation, or how do I do analytics, or how do I look at kind of site reliability, etc., if you don't have all of these foundation layers implemented correctly at the start. There can be some elements around kind of doing this kind of more of an agile methodology about trying to kind of do this as realizing your benefits realization sooner, but it's about trying to work out what you can do now, what you can do today, and how you can implement that to deliver value sooner rather than later. But if you do it in a waterfall approach, if you're still on the waterfall side of things, it is going to just take a very long time to do it. So as long as you've got that kind of clear realization of what you're going to actually do, that is going to be something that's quite key to moving forwards in your journey and roadmap to improvements. So how do we see the data model looking at? How do we enable service effectiveness? And as you can see there, it's a slightly different picture, lots of different tool sets, but they're all integrated, and there's no manual integration with anything. It's about trying to set up all of those different tool sets, all of those different bits of infrastructure, all of those different data repositories that you might have, and making them viewable, making them integrated so you can see a better picture of what you're doing. And it's about understanding the landscape. So if you have a landscape from end to end, and you know exactly what your infrastructure is doing, what data is coming out of it, what services you're running, and how that all fits into a single tool set or a single view, it's going to be so powerful for you to be able to look at, how do I deliver my value? And that's something that is really, really critical. So if you don't have this kind of this model set up, and you don't have any integrations, and you're still doing things manually, or you still got Excel spreadsheets left, right, and center, when it comes to having that discussion and saying, how do I implement this new kind of or some intelligence behind our services, you're going to be on the back foot. And that is something that I do see a lot of when people come to talk to me and my team. They say, Matt, I really want to do this. I really want to kind of make sure that I can have self-service, and I can automate all of my service requests, or I want to be able to kind of do auto failovers on clouds. I want to have, whatever it might be. And my first question is saying, well, how successful have you been so far? And they'll usually say, well, we're struggling actually, because we got data all over the place. Well, we didn't know that this was going to be the case. Oh, we now need to do about 7 different workflows. We didn't realize how big this was going to be. And from there, I will always say, get your back end sorted out, get your foundation layer sorted. And if you're looking at it from a house, you don't look at the roof first, you look at your foundation level. So it's about trying to understand how all of these parts come together. What is your kind of map end to end? And then you can start to kind of work out what you can actually take away from the manual work, and try and automate that, utilizing the tool sets that you've got available to you. So when I start to look at the targets and what is the service value, what's the vision, I still use the kind of the ISO 20000 framework of people process tools. And I would always recommend anybody look at this. And this is the targets of what you're trying to do. So there is a checklist, which I'll talk about in a bit, but it's about trying to understand what is your end goal of what you're trying to achieve. So when you start to think about, right, what's my next steps, about how do we kind of make this kind of more value effective for our clients, how can we achieve benefits realization, start to think about within the people, process, and tools what you're trying to do. So if you're looking at people, you want to make sure that you've got happy users and they're engaged and the services are being delivered and you're delivering more. You want to make sure that you've got collaboration across multiple tool sets. People aren't going to all sit in one tool set, no matter how hard you try and saying, do you know what, we're just going to use ServiceNow or just Remedy or just this, whatever it might be. People will have different tool sets because different strengths across different tool sets exist. So it's a case of, how do I do this? How do I integrate them and make them more improved for collaboration? Do I want lower call volumes on my service desk? Yes, of course I do. So it's a case of trying to automate all of the repetitive tasks, and you're only going to do that if you understand what tasks are out there, and that's where you get good effective problem management as well, which is good, and making sure that people actually trust the tools that they're using, and that's something that is used to enable complete transparency across the board, and people can see from top down all the way down to the bottom, and all the way bottom from all the way to the top. And the way to kind of explain that is, if, say, for example, you've got, I don't know, a cloud server or a SAN storage device that's causing some problems down in the data center, you can start to see how that fits all the way up and how that impacts the top level customer service at the top. So it may be a case of, they're trying to do, a customer's trying to do something and it's failing or taking 20 seconds longer than it should do. That could be a failure of a component that's sitting on a data center somewhere, or in some cases I've known it's sitting on a server underneath someone's desk. But it's, how do you track that all the way through? And it's about building that platform so you can trust the information that's coming to you. The tool set has to be automation focused. It has to have the capabilities to look at automation. You need to make sure that it's not too complex for people to understand, and trying to use it out of the box as best as you possibly can. That's not always the case, but try and do it as best you can. And you also want to make sure your data set is completely synchronized, and making sure that you have a duplex model which is updatable on both sides, but your process should underpin what tool set you update. Okay, so if you're looking at a master repository and you've got something in ServiceNow or Remedy or whatever it might be, making sure that that updates the appropriate tool set or the data model that might be sitting in another tool. As long as the process defines that, you make sure that people aren't updating another tool set when you're doing a change or something like that, which could cause some impacts, and actually you've then got a data problem across the board. You need to make sure your tool sets are upgrade friendly. There's a lot of tool sets that are out there at the moment that are doing upgrades, and they're now N-1. So as soon as your two editions out, you're out of support. So you want to make sure that heavy customizations are not in place, and that's where you start to talk about your business framework. To ensure that you can kind of change your business operational framework to make sure it fits a new way of working, rather than using a tool to kind of fit the business. And you want to make sure you've got low running costs against that tool set as well. Then you start looking at the processes. You've got faster resolution times. If you want to automate something, get it done, get it quickly, so you can deliver extra value to your clients. You want to make sure your targets are fully aligned and across the business. That's something that's quite interesting. When I do have conversations with people, they do say, well, our SLA targets are X, and then you've got a supplier or a different tool set who have a different viewpoint of what that SLA is or what they're trying to do. Or they may be actually utilizing two different processes that are just not compatible, or they just don't know about each other. So it's about making sure, am I aligned on my targets? Then we start looking at future proofing. So this is something that I always talk to my clients about, which is around future proof and making sure that you are prepared for the evolution of new technologies and new ways of working. So when it came about, a lot of changes started to happen around kind of 2010, 2011, when you start looking at, new automation and DevOps and goodness knows what else that was coming out into the industry. It all took a bit by storm, and no one was prepped for it. No one was ready. It was all coming through, and next thing you know, it's on your doorstep and saying, right, we're moving to DevOps next week. That causes its own challenges. But the problem is that your infrastructure or organization is not set up that way. Then that's going to cause a problem, and you're not going to enable the benefits of all of these new ways of working. So you agree the strategy, you agree what you're trying to do, and make sure that everything is connected across the board, and making sure that you all got a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve to enable true intelligence moving forwards. So final slide from me, and this is a checklist, and I really want people to think about this checklist, especially when it starts to come back, when I'm kind of bringing it back to the knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom. So when we are looking at doing your transition and you want to kind of start bringing in new ways of working, you want to start utilizing these new technologies, answer yourself some key questions. So, do I know what I should be providing to my customers? Do I know what technology services I have today, and can I hand on my heart say that those are integrated? Do I know how these are actually supporting and providing that information to my clients or to my customers at the front end or internally? Answer that question. Do I offer innovative, differentiated service to my customers that are value driven? And that is where we start talking about that value chain again. Am I going to be doing something that's normal, or is run of the mill, or is just across the marketplace today, or am I going to give them something more than that? Am I going to give them something more to the customer that they don't even know about? Because that's where you kind of real showcase your value. Do I have the right service strategy? Is it in place? Is it documented? Do people know about it? Is it kind of pushed across the board? Do the operations teams know about it? Do the C-level people know about it? Has it been agreed? Those are the kind of that is a definitely very strong message for the strategy that what you want to kind of showcase. Have you got the organizational setup to enable day-to-day accountability for each service? Does every service have an owner? Is there a portfolio that it sits in, or do they have their own specific process? Does it have its specific supplier management? You need to have an accountability for every single service that you have. It may be one person may look after 50 different services, but as long as it's documented and you've got an accountability for that, fine, no problem at all. Another area is around what role do customers play. So where I kind of go back to that co-creation, where we talked about the ITIL 4 version of service. Co-creation is absolutely kind of so important when you're talking about your customers being involved in the process. So you need to understand their needs and what their likes are on their shopping lists or whatever it might be. So when you kind of work together, you're working collaboratively with your customers to make sure that you're kind of getting to an end result which they need. Okay, so you're delivering a level of service, it's what the customer needs, and it's also looking at additional value that you can drive from that. Another aspect, we'll go back into the organization. Are you kind of organized correctly? Do you have the right teams, people, process, tools, that kind of core methodology again? Is it set up correctly to deliver against those? So if you're moving into more of an agile environment, are you set up for agile? Do you have product owners? Do you have scrums? Do you have, are you able to deliver quickly? Do you work with DevOps? Are you able to kind of do things quickly in order to change your level of service to operate in different market spaces? Whatever it might be, it's about trying to organize yourself effectively. And this next one is, I will always put this to anybody that I see, is that, am I delivering value or am I following the herd? Because it's something that I heard. Oh, this board level guy that I was speaking to the other day, oh, they've just implemented site reliability. So, I want to do that. And so, well, okay, why? What benefit are you going to get from it? Is it you're just spending money to kind of do this, or actually, do you actually need to do that? I always ask that question: am I following the herd, or am I actually going to be delivering some value there? And that's why I need it. There's an element around third-party suppliers. Do they understand what the changes of what we're trying to do? Are they enabled for automation? Are they enabled to kind of utilize DevOps, SecOps, whatever it might be? How does that work? What's the integrated links? And are you working with them to get the best success out of your suppliers? Maybe they're working ahead of the game in front of you, and maybe you're kind of a bit behind. Maybe the other way around. Who knows? Ask the question to yourself. And then we start to kind of look at the kind of bottom aspects, which is around culture. This is probably something that, again, is a big reason why people, I've seen a number of projects fail, is because the culture's not there, because they don't embrace it. People don't understand it, they don't know it, and they're quite happy to work the way that they've wanted to work for the last 20 years, which is fine. But if they're not embracing that, it never gets off the ground. So there'll always be people who kind of say, oh, we've just automated this process, but I prefer doing it my way because I feel important or valued when I do that. So it's around kind of embracing the culture, getting people trained up, getting people knowledgeable about what your journey is, and that will help it start to embed in. And last of all is, can my data be correlated and easily analyzed? This is something that enables the true intelligence moving forwards. Can I see patterns? Can I enable kind of discovery aspects? Can I look to see where all my data is in one go? Well, I'll go back to that kind of viewpoint. So that is a checklist. So whenever you're looking at doing a project or looking at doing service kind of service intelligence based projects, or looking at new ways of working, or whatever it is, have this little checklist in front of you, and then mark off and ask those questions honestly, because in order for you to be successful and making sure that you're driving that value and making sure that these projects are actually implemented correctly and you can use all of this stuff, hand on your heart, ask those questions. If any of those are a no, then you kind of start to say, well, actually, I need to fix this first, or what's the impact of not doing this? So always ask yourself those questions, and that will be your checklist moving forwards. Anyway, thank you for your time. I will be on for questions a bit later, but I will hand back to yourselves.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that. It's some really great insight there, and you're right. I think certainly I've got some questions in the relation to the time. You take that sort of event, that white noise stuff, and turn that into some of the stuff you talked about. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity there to talk about that a little bit later. But thank you very much. And as Matt has said, Matt will be staying with us for the rest of the session. So I'm sure we'll have an opportunity, hopefully, to answer some more further questions then, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so next we're joined by David Agostino, who is ITSM practice lead at Nexthink. And Nexthink's mission is to help IT departments transform the way they service and support their employees. So they help organizations create digital workplaces, real-time analytics, instant remediation, automation, and use employee feedback as part of that as well. So it's about visualizing, acting, engaging across the entire service ecosystem to derive efficiencies and improve the digital experience for the employee. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us.
I'll just get myself off mute there. Hello, David. Thanks very much for the introduction.
And not at all, not at all. I'm really interested actually to listen to some of your thoughts on leveraging service intelligence to continually improve the user experience, and obviously having a chance to look at the stuff that you do. Really interested to what we learn. So hopefully you've got your slides ready, David. Are you ready to take the presenter rights?
I'm ready to take the harness, as it were. Yep. So I'll just wait for that to come along.
Excellent.
And hopefully now you can see my screen.
That's brilliant. If you can just make that full screen, that'd be brilliant.
Share that up. Here we go. So can everybody see the right screen and not my speaker notes on the other side?
That's good to me. That's good to me, David.
Great. Well, thanks again, David, for introducing me. Not only to the session, but also by the correct surname. I've been introduced at sessions like this before as Dave Diagnostic, and people end up thinking I'm part of the product.
That's not a bad thing, but thank you.
And thanks to Matt as well. Very, very interesting sort of overview of the fundamentals, really. And in fact, it's I think there's a lot of synergy between our two presentations, because what I really want to cover really is essentially kind of where we are now in terms of managing the service. There's a lot of very highly skilled people. There's a lot of great technology, and there's some very well defined processes and so on out there. But I think one of the elephants in the room, and the thing that we've been working at Nexthink for 15 years or so, is kind of working on how those services are delivered from the end user's perspective. So I'll look at kind of some of the the opportunities and the challenges that are out there now. Again, I mean, I think kind of pretty much in parallel with what Matt was talking about, taking a step away from the kind of reactive operational view of things and looking at how, the rest of the service pipeline can be kind of supported by service intelligence. Time permitting, we'll take a little bit of a look at how some of the new developments in machine learning and artificial intelligence can help. And then hopefully a brief look at the kind of outcomes. And just like Matt, I'm going to be here for the question and answer session after that as well. So if we kind of take a look at where we are now, I guess, you know, I thought I'd try and start with a picture, really. Hopefully, not all of you are old enough to remember this guy, but this is the ex-head of, he used to be the face of computing technology for the BBC back in the 1980s, a guy called Ian McNaught-Davis, and he's proudly presenting here what was the kind of peak of IT technology, I guess, back in the 1980s. There's a BBC micro here, kind of all hooked up, you know, with its nice screen and everything. And I guess the point of this is that, you know, this kind of illustrates how far technology has moved in the past 30 or 40 years. You know, we've gone far beyond, you know, home computers where you had to type in your own basic programs from a magazine that were not connected to any kind of networks or servers anywhere in the world. You know, technology has moved, you know, orders of magnitude ahead of that picture. But at the same time, you know, about the same time that this guy was presenting the BBC Micro was about the time that, you know, incident management was unleashed on the world in ITIL kind of version 1 back in the day. And I guess part of the conversation we're going to have really is how some of the processes that we're using to manage our technology haven't advanced as quickly as the technology itself. And I think what that often leads to, you know, is a world now where the people that we're serving, and I guess, you know, putting it another way, the people who are paying for us to deliver IT services to them, the people who are running the businesses that rely on those IT services, are getting far more savvy. You know, they'll all sit on their sofa at home, they'll, you know, update Facebook, they'll order things from Amazon, and they're used to technology that just kind of works. I think the trouble is often when they get back into the office, the experience that they have of the services that they're having delivered to them in a kind of corporate environment often don't meet up to those expectations. So there's a degree of frustration. My old CIO in my previous company used to talk about how you know, in some large organizations, using corporate IT was a bit like, you know, sitting at the controls of a Soviet era airliner where everything kind of worked, but it was a bit clunky, and, you know, you were never quite sure when you were going to kind of fall out of the sky. And that's actually kind of apparent in, you know, we've done some surveys. Lots of organizations have done surveys about, you know, the effectiveness of IT technology and so on. And it doesn't matter how well we think our data centers are singing along and the lights are all green there. You know, the average UK worker in this survey is losing something like 9 days a year, and those 9 days ultimately, you know, subtract from the bottom line of that organization. But I think the more troubling statistic is, you know, in this second little bullet here, where, you know, a lot of people in a Forrester survey that we did a few years ago are perfectly aware that there are issues with the quality of the services that are being delivered to those end users. They know that there are problems, but they have no way of figuring out what they are. It's very, very difficult to kind of get to them. And I think that leads to a situation where, you know, the typical end user, the typical business user, back office person, whatever, in an organization has got an experience of IT that doesn't quite match up to our own self-image a lot of the time. You know, I'm sure we've all been, you know, in situations where we've been woken up at 3 in the morning and had to go in and fix things. You know, showing up with the wrong idea of business casual and the wrong tools for the job. And I guess what we're all here talking about and discussing, and what we've all been, you know, striving for over the past several decades is kind of to eliminate that and turn IT into a much more high value partner for the businesses that we serve. So there's a couple of issues. There's a couple of things that lead to that kind of perception that we'll talk about. 2 or 3 of them. The first one of them, I think, is that IT's view of what makes up a service often isn't as broad as we'd like it to be. And, you know, we saw in some of Matt's slides, we saw the kind of architecture and data model that's made up in order to, you know, to give us a view of the service, in order to help us to manage and measure and deliver services effectively. You know, unfortunately, IT's perception sometimes, based on the SLAs that they're using to measure those services, is a little bit distorted. And part of the reason for that is that a lot of the time, the investment that we make in the tools and in the processes can often be over heavily focused on the things that IT can get its arms around. That is, it's easy to put in processes and monitoring tools and so on to manage what's going on from a data perspective. But I think, unfortunately, the further away you get from the data center and the closer you get to the end user, the more diminished, the more out of date, and the more incomplete your view of what's actually going on actually is. Which means that although the SLA markers and RAG status might be all green from IT's point of view, when that's communicated to the end user, often there's a little bit of a breakdown in communication. And it's unfortunate, really, because so much of the consumption of IT services and so much of the perception of that consumption from the end user's point of view is coloured by that. You know, 80% of security threats, for example, happen at the user's end, and it's very difficult to actually identify those and do something about them. The last statistic I saw in my previous job was that, you know, a typical kind of security incident in an organization can take anything up to 250 or 260 days to fully address. A lot of the performance issues don't derive from data center infrastructure or network. They derive from, you know, badly configured or underpowered end user devices, and so on. We can keep going on and on there. And you know, aside from the fact that it leaves end users unhappy and frustrated, it also means that we're spending an awful lot more on keeping those services running than we need to if we had full visibility of what was going on. And I think, you know, in order to understand that, IT needs to have a much more complete view, not only of what's happening from the point of view of the performance, the behavior, and the compliance of all of that chain of infrastructure outside the data center. We also need to have a much better handle of exactly what is the experience of that end user. And as I said before, you know, they oftentimes, you know, are the kind of almost like the shoemaker's children, you know, the elephant in the room, where, you know, they're paying for the service, but we're not necessarily getting a clear picture of everything that's going on. And as we touched on earlier on, unfortunately, the measures that we're using to try and guarantee that service delivery are kind of focused on the things that IT can manage and measure. Now, if we want to truly have a clear understanding of how that end user is actually experiencing those services and how the business is actually using them, and there's a term that's been around for a couple of years now, XLA, as opposed to SLA, which is really about the end user's experience, the experience level agreement, rather than purely focusing on the kind of the more incomplete service level agreement there. The next issue, I guess, would be what you might call, you know, the process comfort zone. You know, as we heard sort of Matt touching on this earlier, and I, you know, entirely agree that, you know, ITSM processes over the years have been developed not only to deal with the kind of operational aspects of delivering services, but also to deal with all of the steps that you need to get there in terms of understanding what the business actually wants through things like demand management and application portfolio management, managing the processes around kind of designing, building, testing, and releasing services into the production environment, and obviously keeping track on everything that's going on there in order to make sure that we can effectively continue to improve those services, you know, cyclically as we're going forwards. Unfortunately, and certainly in my previous life working with a more traditional ITSM tool vendor, you know, probably 80% of the customers that we spoke to would implement the platform, the tooling platform, and they would tend to focus 80% of the time on deploying that kind of set of comfort zone processes that they've been kind of working with so happily for years and years. So things would tend to focus on kind of service desk activities. When you know, in fact, simply focusing on those kind of reactive operational processes is a bit like, you know, an army hiring, you know, more doctors than soldiers on the assumption that, you know, loads of people are going to get wounded, so they need to be repaired, rather than trying to stop people getting wounded in the first place. And there are kind of two categories of problem with that. One is the data that we can get in order to deal with incidents often isn't always of the quality we need to kind of quickly and effectively address those, you know, in every single kind of stage of an incident's life cycle. You know, in terms of capturing information when we're logging a ticket, you know, you can spend 20 minutes on the phone sometimes with somebody who's reporting an incident and not necessarily be that much wiser at the end of that 20 minutes. Because we've got bad information, it's difficult to find the right resolver team to work on it. It's difficult to categorize it. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with the old kind of ping pong or bad assignments, when a ticket bounces, you know, from one resolver team to the next and never seems to be able to find a home. And that's made even worse when you've got a SIAM or multi-service provider kind of setup, where every time you assign a ticket to a different service provider, you know, you're paying a lot of money to not necessarily get anywhere. Lack of data means that it's difficult to investigate the problem, which means that you need to send people on site and you need to spend a lot of time that otherwise could be spent doing more proactive things, and so on. And ultimately, what that means is that the time taken to fix problems is too long, and the number of incidents that we get is too high. Unfortunately, even this you know, slightly less than perfect scenario only happens half of the time. So often as well, we don't even get the incidents in the first place. So, you know, in a typical scenario, and this was again based on a study that we did with Forrester a while ago, you know, the service desk is quite happily going to deal with those 4 incidents that have just been opened without actually knowing that that same issue that's been reported 4 times has been experienced by 72 people. So lots of people, you know, tend to suffer in silence, or, you know, do the I know Fred, I won't call the service desk, I'll just reboot my machine, or I'm not going to bother doing anything about it, or I'll suffer, you know, slow performance, or whatever the case may be. Which means ultimately that IT doesn't have a complete picture of how those services are being delivered and how well they're working for the business. So they've got this kind of incomplete view of what's going on in the world. And even the people who don't experience crashes at some point might do, because they might have devices that are configured in the same way, they're at the same patch level, they're having the same version of an application released out to them, and so on. So there's a kind of time bomb ticking away at the bottom of this iceberg. Just a little bit of light relief while I catch a breath. I saw this cartoon, I thought it kind of thought it was quite apposite, really. ITIL is very interesting because most people use until instead, which is they don't do anything about problems that are happening with end users until they get to hear about them, and they don't often get to hear about them in the first place. So I guess in an ideal world, you know, we'd be focusing not only on making this curve more shallow, making the cost of incident resolution and investigation lower, but ideally we'd be trying to shift left in a true sense even more, where using machine intelligence, using the kind of, you know, automation initiatives that Matt alluded to in his presentation just now, and so on, you know, try and stop things getting to the service desk in the first place, but at the same time have the ability to know that it's all going on. So in the ideal world, we really want to, you know, make the curve shallower but shift left as much as possible. And in order to do that, we need information, we need data. And part of the problem at the moment with understanding what's going on with services is that we just don't have the data available to us about how they're actually performing in the real world. The other problem is that you know, there are attempts at the moment to go for that other set of data points that I mentioned earlier on, that understanding of what's going on with end users. Unfortunately, a lot of the surveying technologies that are being used today tend to be based on kind of email-based kind of processes where you send out an invitation for somebody to click on a link to go and kind of fill in a form. And I don't think I've spoken to a single customer of mine in the past 10 years who's ever managed to get more than a 5 or 10% rate of return on those survey invitations that go out. It's almost as if part of the survey process is to delete the email before you do anything with it. And unfortunately as well, those 5 or 10% of survey responses that come back tend to be filled in by people who are either wildly happy with the service they're getting or wildly unhappy with the service they're getting. So there's no real understanding of what's going on in the mainstream. How are those other 80% of people actually doing? They might be bumping along, but they might have some brilliant ideas for improving the service or improving the performance of the service. It's just that you're not getting to it. You're not getting to that intelligence, if you like, from the users and the consumers of those IT services. And so far, we've really only been talking about the kind of reactive aspects, kind of incident management, and the problems we've got with that. If we look at the service lifecycle, we saw that there's an awful lot more on top of incident management and change management and so on. And to be honest, that kind of data and support for those processes is critical. From an IT leadership perspective, you've got the poor old CIO sitting here who's being told on the one hand by the business that there are restrictions on budget. There's never enough money to spend on all of the initiatives that you'd like to spend it on. The business themselves are wanting to focus very heavily on what their business requirements are, and they can be very complex. They can change from day to day. There's an ongoing kind of imperative to stay competitive, and in order to respond to that, the IT leadership team actually finds it very difficult to articulate what value IT is providing in real terms. Oftentimes the only document that's available is the SLA, and that, as we touched on earlier, isn't always necessarily a trusted document. I was talking to a customer in Canada a few years ago that was spending something like $12 million a year for a service provider to produce their monthly service reports, which came along a month late. So they were spending $12 million a year for information that was out of date and incomplete when they got it. As a subset of that, understanding how much it's actually costing to deliver service, and understanding how well or badly that service is being delivered, means that IT leadership have got a challenge in terms of presenting their own credibility or supporting their own credibility in terms of supporting the business, actually demonstrating the contribution they're making to the business and proving the competency of their organization, which means a lot of the time that the poor old CIO is stuck in a very hard place. In fact, if anyone's read the Phoenix Project, you may already know that there's an alternative definition of CIO, as well as Chief Information Officer. It can also stand for career is over. So how can we help him? Well, again, in order to do that job, the CIO needs to have intelligence, he needs to have data, he needs to have an understanding of how those services are performing and what the business needs from him. And so from the point of view of design and build and release, there's a fairly kind of traditional kind of project life cycle, if you like, that we can look at in terms of planning the project, planning a new release or improvements to a service or a new service introduction or whatever the case may be. We need to make that project work. We need to review it to make sure it has worked, and then we need to make sure that it operates correctly in a kind of a business as usual setting. And in order to do that, there's a mass of data that we need to have, in an up-to-date and in an accurate way. I'm not going to go through all of these bullet points right now. You'll be pleased to hear, but it's just very difficult to get that information. A lot of it is based on conversations rather than facts. A lot of it is out of date. A lot of it just doesn't exist. And so sometimes it's easy for projects to go, over time or over budget, or perhaps even to deliver new functionality that wasn't quite what was needed in the first place. And there are multiple kind of, if you like, data points that need to be addressed in order to do that. If we take one step back and look at the strategic aspects of this as well. So before we start planning and executing projects, we need to figure out what projects we want to execute in the first place. So from a high level point of view, kind of senior IT management needs to understand what services the business wants. So they need to understand demand management, and they need to understand their portfolio of services and applications and how they're performing very, very well. And then they need, again, a whole series of data points to help them to understand, what is the actual risk in reality, rather than a water cooler conversation. Do I have visibility of how much it's costing to roll out these services? Do I have visibility of how much it's costing me to actually operate them? We had a customer a while ago who actually had to stop a rollout of Windows 10 across their organization because they were opening so many tickets due to a misconfiguration that their budget ran out for opening tickets with their service provider, and they couldn't continue with the rollout until they got that issue addressed, which was a major disruption to the business, and something they just didn't have the intelligence, they just didn't have the data before the project actually started to roll out. And I guess the thing is that we've seen this picture already. We've seen a picture of the life cycle of a service from the time that we're understanding the demand for a new service or improvements to an existing service, the kind of risk calculations that need to be done, the factors around governance and risk and compliance, and managing the projects and managing the software lifecycle itself, and testing and so on. And I guess the point is that all of the planks are in place, all of the components and the process descriptions are in place. What's missing is the data from the complete picture, from the end user right into the data center, and the kind of operational aspects and the end user perception and sentiment aspects, in order to make sure that we're feeding this data model correctly. And I guess that one of the big great hopes for the future about how we can improve this is things like machine learning and so on, and it certainly can help. Just as a kind of recap, I guess that the shift is from an idea where, from a traditional programming point of view, you need to know everything before you get your results. In that, you need to design your data model, you need to write your code, you need to build it, it needs to do its work, and then it produces results for you. And I guess one of the kind of philosophical shifts from a machine learning point of view is that there's more of an opportunity for us, and this comes back again to Matt's discussion about automation earlier on. If we've got the right things in place, we can actually drive more automation to respond to deviations from what we consider to be the kind of desired result. And the longer this goes on and the more we learn, the more we can automate, the more we can manage. And it's not just a case of jumping straight to kind of box 64 on the chessboard straight away. I mean, I know that artificial intelligence and deep learning and chatbots that kind of conform to the Turing test and so on are all there as the ultimate goals of this. But there are a number of steps on the way, and they can all add value. So we don't have to get all the way to deep learning before we can start making sense of all of the data and so on that we're collecting. And there are tools around now. And again, as we heard Matt talking about earlier on, there's a lot of tools that perhaps are working in isolation that would give us a much more holistic and complete picture if they're all integrated with each other. And the kind of integration piece of this would be considered to be part of the roadmap, if you like, to get to this ultimate kind of machine intelligence kind of goal. But if we've got the ability to do the appropriate metrics and analytics. At the very least, even at the aggregate stage, we can start to produce advice, and we can start to get sense out of this in order to help us to improve the quality of the services we're delivering. We get more value the further down the road we go with this. And there are some examples of where we are at the moment. We've got varying levels of kind of chatbot capabilities that are out there. Certainly a lot of the tools that I've seen, the kind of traditional kind of IT service management tools that are out there, are getting better at learning from the data that exists in the incident or the knowledge base or the change history or whatever, to help us to perhaps automatically assign tickets to the right resolver group, to automatically trigger the appropriate workflow, automatically categorize the ticket, and so on. But again, the even machine intelligence is only as good as the data that you're feeding it. And I think at the moment we're still getting an incomplete picture in our tools databases to allow us to do an exhaustive job of taking advantage of machine learning and analytics. But just one kind of example here would be typically chatbots at the moment tend to be based on fairly kind of simplistic workflows, and you could imagine a situation where at the moment you go in and you ask to have your PC health checked. That might actually end up dropping out of the workflow, going to an agent or a technician to go and remotely dial in and check the PC health. Now, wouldn't it be great if the data was available for us to be able to go and look at a service or a device in real time, run a series of tests, and then perhaps even make some suggestions about steps that can be done automatically in order to resolve that issue. And in this particular case, we're not putting any load on the service desk. We're identifying an issue that perhaps wouldn't have been uncovered before, that wouldn't have been reported to the service desk. So we're being more effective, but also much more resource effective as well. And I guess at the end of the day, and again, this is based on another study that's out there from Forrester. We saw about the typical kind of worker maybe losing several days a year, or 22 minutes a day, or whatever statistic you want to use. And unfortunately, what that leads to often is an experience for the end user, and everyone's had it. When you get into the office at the beginning of the day and you've got a to-do list of 10 items, and you feel like you're working your back off all day long, and as you head home, you see that you've now got a to-do list of 11 items instead. You just feel that you've been working like crazy but not making any progress. And part of that is part of it's down to technology, but part of it is just this inability to stay in this blue area, what you might call the flow zone, the place where somebody sitting down at their desk, their head's in the right place, they can concentrate on the right things, interruptions aren't dragging them away from their work. Every time you get interrupted, it takes you 20 minutes to get back into the right place again. And you can be in a situation where you can be at the office all day and actually not do a great deal of productive work. Now, if you can help to eliminate some of that, and if you can kind of head towards this more ideal world and keep people up in this flow zone more, then the study that Forrester did kind of highlighted that individuals can be anything up to twice as effective as they were. They can get much more effective work done, much more high quality knowledge worker work done, if you like. And that's because if we've got the intelligence to understand accurately how services are being delivered, we can do a lot more to ensure that people can stay using those services properly and kind of essentially get more work done for the business, which ultimately means that end users end up loving technology instead of muttering about it when they get home at night. I think I've done that within time. I'll be around for questions and answers at the end of this. Thanks for your attention, and I look forward to listening to the next session.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Some really cool thinking there as well, and following well on from the last one. Yeah, so hopefully you will be around. Hopefully staying with us, David, to maybe pick up some of the Q&As after the next session, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. I'll I'll be on for a while, so I look forward to hearing the next one.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much indeed. And indeed, the next one. So yeah, we're on to our next speaker, and it's great to be able to bring in Dean Clayton, who is Service Management Automation X, or SMAX product manager at Micro Focus. And Dean has some 15 years experience in IT with Hewlett Packard Enterprise prior to Micro Focus merger, and at AT&T as well. And SMAX is described as the machine learning based solution for IT service management, asset management, and enterprise management. And indeed, a Forrester report identified Micro Focus as one of the 3 leaders in the enterprise service management arena in 2018, which is really cool. So welcome, Dean. How are you?
Hi, David. I'm good, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. That's all loud and clear. I think we'll be listening to you talk about some of the common principles and terminology of AI and machine learning, and what the industry's saying maybe, and some of the benefits that can be realized from automation, machine learning, AI, all that brilliant technology. So hopefully you've got your slides in place, Dean, and are ready to rock and roll.
Yep, sure. I'll just start sharing my screen, and hopefully we can share the presentation.
Excellent. That's great. And if you could just make that full screen, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, just sending out to full screen now.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. So yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, David. So hi, everyone. Yeah, as I was brilliantly introduced there, my name is Dean Clayton. I'm a product manager for SMAX, which is the Micro Focus service management tool set. I'll give a little bit of insight into the products as I go through this presentation. But really what I wanted to talk about was obviously looking at how, I guess from an industry perspective, but also us as Micro Focus, how we're embracing AI and machine learning, and how we're bringing that into the core of our service management solutions, to make it so that, you know, as consumers, as service desk agents, so the business and the process owners can basically take on that capability, and embrace it, and be able to move forward with it. As a quick thing, before I get into the main presentation, I guess AI is always one of those interesting concepts, and I think if we think about it from a media perspective, there's a certain view that the world has, maybe a slightly dystopian view of what's happening around AI and the rise of the machines. But from our perspective, I think we have a more, should we say, nicer view of what AI is, and certainly Max, who's our smart virtual agent that we have within our product, is kind of that nice face, or more friendly face, of how AI can augment what we do within service management. So really just to cover the 3 areas that I'm going to go through. So I'm going to do a bit of a brief overview of some of the principles of AI and machine learning, some of the terminology that's used, just to kind of give a bit of a foundation of some of the other topics that I'm going to talk about. I'm then going to follow that by some details about some research that we helped funded with the Enterprise Management Associates, who looked at automation, AI, and analytics, and how that's impacting our IT service management. And then I'm going to look about how ways of applying AI and machine learning to service management, obviously from a focus of how we've done that within our own company and within SMAX, our products. And then subject to how much I talk, which is probably the biggest issue we'll have with my presentation, I've got opportunity to, Max would like to do a little demo of his capabilities and give you a little bit of a insight of how that works within the tool. Okay, so principles of AI and machine learning. So I'm not going to read all the details on the slide, and I think we've, Matt and Dave, who's obviously been before us, have talked quite a bit about how this fits into what we do. But just to kind of cover some basic terminology, should we say? So a lot of people, when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and obviously where that's coming from, be that from software or machines. I think a lot of what we talk about when we reference AI is actually when we're really talking about is machine learning. So basically having programs, having software that can learn from examples. So going back to some of the early comments about having the right kind of data, so it can then understand and interpret that, and then be able to utilize that to improve things. And obviously then you've got how that fits into representation or feature learning. Deep learning, I think, is where we get into the really heavy stuff that probably from a service management perspective, we're not really there. But obviously, as you go into the wider space around AI and the capabilities, we're also then to talk about things, neural networks and cognitive computing. But I think the real focus, certainly where, from a service management perspective, where we can get the initial kind of lead into it is around machine learning. And if we think about common machine learning tasks, these things on the left-hand side are typical things that are done as part of machine learning. So maybe categorization, should we say, of or activities that normally machine learning is done. On the right there is kind of those kind of capabilities of how they can be kind of mapped to what could be done within the service management. So we think about classification, being able to smartly classify a ticket and potentially reduce some of the work that an agent has to do around reporting data that's required around the ticket. If we look at regression, how that can be done to identify maybe projection of situation around incidents, or even from an analytics perspective, especially to look at failure rates of change and where you can look to identify improvements, that kind of thing. Clustering is always an interesting one. For me, my background before I got into service management consultancy in the mid-2000s, I used to work at BMW for AT&T, and one of the things that was my job was trying to do trend analysis around problem management. And the biggest issue of that was you'd always download things into an Excel spreadsheet and try and work out, looking at titles of problems or incidents that you've got to try and identify some trends. And again, machine learning is one of them areas where it can kind of do that grunt work for you there to make that kind of thing easier through clustering and identifying hot topics across a large batch of data. You've also then got into the classic things of transcription, so being able to read text from images, identify what an image is based on algorithms, and then obviously translation as well. So I'm pretty sure most people have used Google Translate at some point. That's a classic example of being able to do that, being able to read that from that dictionary and be able to pull back that data. And again, then structured output, anomaly detection, which fits into that monitoring space as well. And then also doing synthesis and sampling. So being able to either do text to voice type functionality, or being able to how a virtual agent might have a conversation and come back with appropriate responses to the questions that you ask it. As we move forward then, and we think about those algorithms that you would do as part of machine learning, they kind of break down into four specific areas, so of different types of learning. So supervised learning is really kind of doing that mapping of input and outputs and pairing them together, and that is commonly something how we utilize it around intent training for virtual agents. If we think that in the more of a the consumer space, that's how Alexa knows how to respond to some of the inputs you might say to it. You might ask it to play a particular record. It will obviously be able to then identify what that is and provide that data back and play that song. Unsupervised learning is obviously then being able to, it's a way of describing the structure of the unlabeled data. Okay, so again, this is kind of doing that thing where it's I'm going to look at some unstructured data, so maybe like the contents within descriptions of tickets, and then being able to do some analysis and identify similar words, or maybe trying to identify similar cases or tickets that may be mapped through or handled in a similar way, so that I can then potentially do something in response to that. So maybe suggest some offerings from a service catalog based on maybe what you've typed in. You've then also got semi-supervised learning. So it's using that labeled and structured and unstructured data for training to do smart ticketing type aspects. So for me, I look at this as kind of this is where you're starting to do some automatic training on some of your systems to be able to understand the data and then say, okay, in all instances, rather than me just suggesting something, I'm actually going to say, in these cases, we're always going to go down this particular route. And then again, there's also reinforcement learning. So this one, I think we all kind of feed into this one a little bit, but this is obviously things like marking things as helpful or not helpful, responding in that kind of feedback to what's provided to us, and then being able to utilize that information to adjust something else. So a good example is I guess in the real world, is the way that Google kind of reacts to the links that you click on when you do a search. If you're clicking on something that's lower down on a search, that's going to potentially increase its weighting. So the next time someone does a similar search, that result will potentially bubble up higher. Or at least that's how it used to be before. Obviously, they tend to put a lot of ads on their search. Okay, so that's kind of covered a little bit of a broad basics and some of the keywords that's out there. What I wanted to do then, as part of the second part of my talk, was give you a bit of insight into some research that we helped sponsor from the Enterprise Management Associates. They put a paper together around automation, AI, and analytics, and how that's reinventing ITSM, and basically looking into how IT leaders out there want to and rely on automation, AI, and analytics to refine and improve their IT service management within their company. I've put a link in the slide, and for David and obviously for the SDI, we'll happily share that link out, I'm sure, through the session, so that you can go and download a copy of the report that we've got. It's a 16-page report that's quite useful. But I've kind of covered off a couple of the core areas, the 4 of the topics that are in that report, just to kind of give you a high-level flavour. So the first one of those is quite a simple question. When you think of AI, what comes to mind? What's your view on what that means? And I think the top 3 kind of sort of come across as pretty obvious, I guess. Being able to do that machine learning, thinking about big data, having those giant data lakes of information that you can then do something with, be that either for reporting purposes or for analytics, or even being able to train from a machine learning perspective. And I think one of the other things that we've noticed as well is an increase in the concepts of bots as well. And I think we also get that in the consumer space with even just from a mobile phone perspective, with things like Siri and Alexa and Bixby from Samsung. You kind of get that aspects of, we're starting to try and find ways to get some worker bots to do activities for us and do those common tasks that are easy and quick to do. I think the other things that you tend to see on there kind of sort of break down into more specifics of where people are looking, probably something specifically related to what they want to do. And then we look at those analytics and automation findings, and there was kind of 3 big points that kind of jumped out of where people, those IT leaders, were interested in how it can help. So one, obviously, from a maturity perspective of ITIL adoption, in about to enhance the levels. So they kind of felt that the structure that ITIL brings also then strongly correlates with excessive AI and analytics and adoption of automation within their organization. And I think if you tie that back quite nicely to what Matt was saying at the beginning in the first talk, having that structured data can be really useful to then being able to, understanding a process, and then you can start to break down that process of how you can potentially automate some of those steps and speed up the overall delivery and increase customer satisfaction. The follow-on to that one is obviously around about productivity. So how that brings out cost savings, the productivity for agents, and obviously the increase in end user satisfaction. The last thing that we want to be is in a situation whereby I phone up the service desk and I ask for my maybe my mail password to be reset, and I have to wait 3 or 4 days before I can actually get in my mail. What we want is that whole process to be as automated as possible, really straightforward, so that I can get in and carry on with the work that I need to do, and I don't lose those days, as David pointed out, which is a common issue that faces organisations today. And then I think the big one as well is obviously the general cost savings and OPEX efficiencies. And it's not just within IT, but it's also beyond IT, and being able to provide value from service and support to the business, but also then being able to sell the IT service within the organisation to help provide and do bigger things for the business and help improve things. From an obstacles perspective, it's kind of quite funny, because it's almost, to me, feels like the 3 pillars of ITIL there. So obviously people, training and skill set, and having their skills, and some of that, some of this is obviously from a point of view of people understanding machine learning, but maybe also being able to use the tools that they already have within their organisation that can help leverage to move forward. Again, then processes and procedures. And as was pointed out early on before, resistant to change and changes to processes. That whole management of change itself is always one of those interesting challenges within any organisation. And then technology-specific issues, so lack of integration with current tools, resourcing, and maybe there might be some cultural and political issues in being able to get access to those tools or everything else. If we look at across Europe, we obviously have things like GDPR, which has an interesting implication to the data that we store, and therefore has an impact on whether businesses want to store certain types of data, or maybe aren't quite ready to store that kind of data to be able to improve things for them. And finally, just to kind of cover off some of those top AI and analytical initiatives that those IT leaders are looking at. So looking at it from AI Ops, so how operations can help improve things using analytics, be that either across event or the digital operations, things like portals, that kind of thing. Incident response analytics, so to improve the overall responsiveness for IT. And what I find quite interesting is big data. So that data lake is probably lower than I may have thought it would have been. And again, I think that probably comes down to being able to consume that data and create it's one great thing, but it's actually how can I then utilize that. But also, I think the other thing is looking at it for where analytics can be used for specific business performance as well is always a really important thing within organizations. Okay. So I've talked about that report, and as I said, you can download and get access to that report from our website. We'll show you the link later on during the sessions. Last section that I want to really cover on is about applying AI machine learning to service management. So how can that be done? From our point of view, how have we done that to help you and your business move forward? So if we think of typical service management issues, we tend to see issues around poor end user experience, maybe getting into and asking too much information to feed the system is normally the root cause around that. Making a user fill out way too much data before they create a ticket, maybe on a portal, or similar from when they speak to someone on the service desk. Or maybe going into search hell, as it were, trying to find something, trying to find the right answer. So being able to pull back the right kind of results for them to solve their issue. And again, similar to the top one, garbage in, garbage out. So having the wrong kind of data or bad data can obviously lead down the wrong route in how to potentially solve an issue, an incident or a problem. Again, then there's the concept of dark data. So information that's just in unstructured text, or maybe even attachments or images like screenshots, etc. Not being able to utilize that for analysis. I think one that I always, so as I mentioned earlier on about what I used to do as a role, being able to go from the incident to the problem process quickly. So let the incident team focus on getting that service restored as fast as possible, and separating out and isolating the actual underlying problem to look at that and investigate that in a proper way. You know, identify that known error and be able to solve that. And then I think the other one that's an interesting one is that continual service improvement mirage. So, you know, the perception that, oh, we'll just have a shiny new portal and that'll improve everything and everyone will be happy, and not thinking about actually the fact that the service desk is more than just a technology platform. You know, it's there to help drive the business processes, not just from a people perspective, but also the processes that are there, and how that's then filtered through from what's available through a service portal and a service catalog and those kind of things. So from a market focus perspective, we defined, taking off, I think it's Isaac Asimov's in the 70s, 3 laws of AI and machine learning. So our first one is we want it built as a core capability. So when we developed our SMAX product, one of the things that we did with that is we said we wanted machine learning to be heart of that product. We utilize an industry best machine learning tool called IDLE, which is a product that we own, and that's core to SMAX, and it's there for not just search functionalities, but a lot of the other machine learning capabilities as well. And all our customers get that. It's not an add-on that you have to purchase extra. It's included as core, as part of the product. The second law that we like to adhere to is being use case or business outcomes driven. Not just, you know, bolting on something because we can. It's more of a case of saying, you know, if we want to do analytics around change, what do we want to do? Do we want to drive, you know, look at how we can drive that capability, utilize that to help improve the overall success rate of change, maybe look at how customers can move from normal changes through to standard changes and improve those processes, maybe even looking at how they can automate some of those processes. And then the third one is going about that automated machine learning. And that's where kind of not necessarily, you know, from a customer perspective, being able to use it as is. So not necessarily a full black box, but the capability is there. You can configure it, you can amend some of the features around it to align to your individual business processes, but have the complex work done for you. So it's there, ready and usable, and then it's just being able to consume it, and also then it can learn and train itself as part of that process. So that's kind of our three laws. And then if we think about our approach for those business outcomes for key stakeholders, and then I'll go into some of the details of how we've utilized it. We look at it from a business user perspective, so looking at how we can improve self-sufficiency, and obviously the overall reduction of tickets that are being generated and having to be worked on by first or second or third line. We then look at it from an agent perspective about improving productivity, so shorter processing time on tickets, maybe reducing some of the noise so they can work on the more complex activities that need to be done, or need more, or the more higher priority stuff within the business that needs some dedicated focus. And then from a supervisor or process owner perspective, doing that process optimization. So how can we improve our key performance indicators? How can we get those overall improvements at that high level about the processes that we have within the tooling? So I'm going to kind of cover off some of those and how we've embedded those within SMAX. So one of the first ones, obviously, about user input. So obviously we're all used to web portals and mobile phone portals as well. So that's obviously a key thing that can be used from a technology perspective. But then actually being able to do the user improvement of doing things like image recognition, so optical character recognition within images. So being able to paste an image or add an attachment to a ticket as part of that creation process, and then extracting that data out so that the text is then copied into the description, so it can be utilized either by the system itself for maybe auto categorization, or also maybe to help some of the processes that follow on beyond that. If we then look at virtual agents, and we'll go into this, I'll show Max obviously a bit later on, but talk about natural language processing with virtual agents. So being able to provide that human-like interface, a conversational type approach between from an end user on a portal or an app, that can provide those relevant and rich contextual answers, and not pre-made ones, so not kind of like that classic kind of decision tree type routing, but being able to pull in dynamic data. So being able to almost utilize that search engine capabilities as well to say, if they said this type of thing, our intent is leading down this way, which means it could be one of these options, and presenting those to the user. Leading on from that, obviously into generic search. So not just for end users, but also having that wider ITSM ontology for search for agents as well. So as an agent, being able to do that keyword lookup, but be able to type in a string of text and be able to pull back something that's relevant, be it from requests, be it from incident, be it from knowledge articles or news, etc. But also then given the ability to filter on that, or being able to do it in context of what they're doing. So if they're within, should we say, dealing with someone on the phone, and they're saying they've got an issue, being able to identify whether there's a common issue with their service that they're talking about, and automatically being able to raise that ticket and assign it and relate it to the incident that's already sitting there within the system. Another one similar to the optical character recognition is also text analysis. So being able to look at metadata within things. So in this example here, we have a concept what we call CI detection, which is the ability that if someone types within a description field on a request, an incident, a problem, or a change, the name of a CI that's held within the system, and it's not just the name. We also do it on 5 or 6 other key fields like IP address or host name, that kind of thing. It will identify it and sort of suggest it to the agent to say, hey, look, I found this particular device. Do you want to relate this ticket to that device, that CI? And off the back of that reduces obviously some workload for the agent, because they haven't got to go and add that or relate the ticket to that CI. But it also means then you've got that data automatically related to that device. So when you look at the history from the other side, when you're looking at CI and you're trying to understand what's happened and the tickets that have been raised against it, you've got that data automatically available to you. The other thing then with that text analysis is around clustering. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was hot topic analytics, and being able to do that kind of search. And if we think about this from a problem management perspective, this is that being able to do that trend analysis, look at the descriptions of and the unstructured data on a range of incidents, and being able to identify keywords that allows you then to do that bit of a dive and identify multiple issues that may not be entirely obvious based on just looking at the raw data. So being able to dive into that and using things like the Bayes algorithm as an enabling technology to be able to pull back that data and then group that data and then be able to create those tickets. And then also going on about those KPI improvements from a process owner type perspective, being able to do that prescriptive analytics. So as I mentioned before, looking at the success rate of change as an example, across standard, normal, or emergency changes, and then look at how far you are against a particular goal and how you may be able to improve that. So maybe say identifying that all your normal changes that are occurring on your Oracle system, or maybe in relation to your Active Directory, those ones seem to fail more consistently compared to others. So therefore, they're the ones that we need to look into and do a bit more dive in and focus on those. And finally, last thing that I wanted to cover off is introduction to Max. So Max is something we brought into our products as part of earlier this year, a few months ago. And Max is our new smart virtual agent that works on the portal. And the concept really with the virtual agent is to identify and deal with those frequently asked questions and troubleshoot common problems. So deal with, should we say, the 30% of low hanging fruit, should we say, of the tickets that customer or the issues that that end users need solving, so that a live agent can deal with probably the more complex things related to obviously submitting requests on behalf when they phone up, or maybe dealing with the more complex issues, as part of a whole maybe shift left strategy of getting the first line get more involved with second line activities after being freed up by the virtual agent being able to do that. Now, I was going to do a demo of Max. David, how are we doing for time? I'm just quite conscious of obviously making sure we got time for Q&A.
Yeah, time is good. So we'll be looking at Q&A at 1:45. So yeah, we've got a few minutes.
So okay, so I'll do a quick run through of Max capabilities then. So I'll just switch to a browser. And hopefully that's sharing okay. So I'm logged in here into the end user portal of SMAX, and I just clicked on the virtual agent to bring Max up. And one of the key things is obviously him being able to suggest obviously relevant stuff based on maybe other tickets that have been raised, or requests or information that's been entered in by other users. But where the power of obviously a virtual agent really comes into is being able to respond to the type of things that we type in. So for instance, if I want to say, hey Max, how do I get a new laptop? Being able to verify that's what I'll be straightforward, easy one, and then presenting that form back to me for me to fill out and get the relevant, raise that request for a new laptop. So I'll just restart that conversation. But of course, we could do it in is then being able to understand the intents and the kind of things that we type in. So for instance, if I typed in, I'm having issues with my laptop, it seems to be rebooting for no reason. Max being out, and our virtual agent being able to take that and identify that maybe we need to repair our PC based on either previous learning that it's done in relation to it. And obviously off the back of that, on a form to fill out to raise a support request, and for me to be able to submit a ticket. So yeah, let's submit that ticket, and obviously we've got that ticket raised. Now, of course, we could switch to a live agent at that point if we wanted to, and maybe provide some additional information. But the other thing I wanted to show was kind of how you can do that more full end-to-end kind of process with Max as well. So, in this case, hey Max, I want to let you know that I've recently moved. And based on that, being able to hook into some automation around updating contact information. So in this case, he's asking me a nice question. Why did I move? Well, I didn't like the commute, so I decided I'm going to move closer to the office in this case. And, that's good. If I need to verify HR to contact me, well, I think we'll specify email in this case. No need for them to give me a ring. Now, the other thing then you can do is obviously getting the virtual agent to ask specific questions, and it might be that you want those questions maybe mandatory for a specific reason, or give the ability to skip questions if maybe it's not relevant for the update. In this case, I'm going to put in my my new address, and I think what we'll do is we'll adding the number. And obviously that's my tickets created. Now, where the power you've got here is not only can you utilize that virtual agent to ask the relevant questions related to the specific request that's being raised, but it's then being able to utilize that to then complete and fill in the automation. So as you can see, where I've now just jumped and looked at my ticket, all that conversation that I've had with Max about moving is all in that ticket, so the details there. And we've had a solution already for Max to say my personal contact details have been updated in the HR system. That's really nice of Max. Do I trust him? Well, I guess we can have a look on the agent's side so I'll just quickly jump across to the agent side of SMAX, We'll go across to the people records. We'll look at my data, and yep, we can see here my actual location has been updated with the data that's been pushed through. Now, all that's the way that we handle that is as part of the virtual agent settings. Is we have a concept of intents. So every all the offerings that you can have, or knowledge articles that you can have within the system, they can be linked to a set of intents, which basically allows Max to interpret what an end user says to then help direct them down the right kind of way. You'll also note here is the ability to do some automatic learning and do some training as well that we've built into Max. So this is where you can kind of sort of say, okay, rather than me trying to manually build out those intents for all the different offerings or articles we've got in our system, what are the higher profile ones that are being generated out there, and getting to auto suggest those and then start to pull back some of the basic data around some common phrases that are used to create that. The other thing that you've got is obviously you can change some of the standard text that you put around Max in there, and also some of the thresholds around how the data is being used. If we look at an example one, so that request a new PC one that we did initially, you can see here we've got obviously the type of response that it comes back with. So do you want to request a new PC? But that you can obviously tailor. Likewise, some of the training sentences. So those intents that we've put in, and we've just put a few in, and none of those, those are then tied to basic ways for Max to understand, but it will use them as the basis along with other tickets that get raised against this particular offering. Now, the other thing that we do as part of this as well is we have the action mode. So this is where you can link it to those particular offerings you have in the catalog. So if there's specific questions or anything, you can drive that from there. But we also then have a conversation mode. So if we look at the change personal details and how we did that with the other ticket that we raised, as I just rolled up there, is none of those there were actually what I typed. I just typed that about that I moved, but it's learned and understood that. And then in conversational mode, you can actually specify how he responds. And you can give him multiple responses of how Max, or if you don't want to call him Max, you want to call him something else, you feel free to do so, can respond back to an end user. So it's not always seen like as that robotic. It could be a choice of phrases that they respond back with. Likewise, with the closing message, after they've submitted a ticket, the response they'll get back to you there can be all done as part of that as well. Okay, so that was just a quick highlight reel. I think I've done pretty well for timing on there, I think. So with that, I'd like to end, and thank you for your time and for listening, and I'll hand back to you, Dave.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. Some really great information. I think certainly, all morning or afternoon actually, we've heard some really cool stuff. And I think what struck me more than ever again is how all this really shapes what we become. What we really should be. What service is becoming. What we should be considering. Because I think many organisations, certainly that I see, are still in a place where they don't understand what all this means and how to approach that change and what the change means to them, their organization, and their customers as well. Some really great stuff. Now, I've got about, well, I don't know, I think at the last count, about 3,500 questions, I think, which I don't think I'm going to get through today. But let's see if we've got any questions from our listeners. Emma, have we got anything from our listeners?
Yeah, we do, Dave. We have a couple of questions. Shall I kick off with the first question? It's for Matt.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I'm here.
Hi, good. The first question, Matt, is how would you describe the right culture for delivering an intelligence service organisation?
So I would say, I would probably say that for me, I would say, so I'll get there in a minute. It's all about taking personal responsibility for the success of your business. So what I mean by that is, if everybody is bought into the vision of the company and the growth of the company and making their lives better, and people can see it, they're being communicated, and the top lines level of management are being transparent about what is going to happen and how we're going to do it and the benefits realization for every single person, that's how you start to kind of embrace that culture, because people will be competitive. You can gamify it as well to ensure that they are working together as one team with a clear focus, clear drive. Everybody's on board and wants to do the best that they possibly can, and they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Without that, you're going to end up going in totally different directions, and you'll have situations where people are going to be just sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it. So if someone's got an idea or an improvement or how to do things and make things better, always ask them the question and saying, okay, let's see how we can do this, or what can you do to make that happen? So give people empowerment, give people responsibility, share that vision.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. You know what? Sorry, it's Emma. That sort of plays back to what I was saying actually. There, when you look at the new ways of considering service, or the move from historically governance, control, process, those types of models, quality assurance, into behavioral analytics, into predictive, into self-heal, into automation. That's quite a shift, not only for the technology, but the culture of the people in the organization, and obviously them understanding what those changes mean to them. A really interesting question, actually, and I don't suppose we can answer that in one go. We could probably write books on that, I should imagine. Emma, any other questions there from our listeners?
Yeah, we do. We have another question, which probably is for all of our presenters. It is, we've got a service catalogue, but not really sure that it's working for us. What's the best way to improve it?
Thank you, Emma. And I think, does anybody want to pick up that, guys? Because we did see the importance earlier, didn't we, about event management and all, understanding all that sort of, I don't know, that white noise and how that relates to service and service catalogue. Does anybody want to pick that up?
Yeah, I can pick that up as well. So in terms of the service catalog piece itself, I suppose definition of what services you deliver is quite key, and do it from the top down, right? So if you understand what services you deliver to your clients, what are valuable? How does that fit within the market space? So this is where it kind of goes into the old ITIL strategy element, is where are your market spaces operate and what services you actually deliver to your clients and what are valuable to you, and then understand the components that actually define and build that service. Always take out anything that is not required or just too expensive or not delivering any value. So where we go back to that value aspect, is your service delivering value? Yes or no? If it's not, get rid of it, replace it, or do something else. If it is, great. How do you make it better? And what are the component levels that support that service, and make sure that they're the best that they possibly can?
Good, thank you. Does anybody else want to join in on that one, guys?
Yeah, David. I think from my perspective, I agree with a lot of what Matt said there. I think the other aspect as well is sometimes there's always that advantage of looking at the quick wins. So for me, especially when you look around the service catalog, I think there's and think about it that lower level of, what are users when they're raising tickets, how are those tickets being classified and being utilized within the business, is then kind of sort of saying, well, there's obviously probably some common things. So it's easy to turn around and think about, say, the new starter process or requesting a new laptop, because they're fairly straightforward offerings that you might have within your service catalog. But maybe look at the ones that are getting created and then utilize those on a very smart basis to look at how you could automate them. So for instance, if you look at something like, should we say, ordering a new laptop type process, it might be, if you break down the actual process steps involved with that, to do with the fulfillment, maybe deploying an image to that laptop, and maybe how that actually gets delivered, some of those individual steps you might be able to find opportunities for automation. And then off the back of that might actually then start the chain of thought to go, well, we've done that in that particular space, we can now apply that to this other space. And if you take that sort of small agile type approach to sort of grow out the automation, and then potentially also other aspects around AI, that I think is a really good way to kind of help show maturity within your organization and help improve the service you're giving your end users.
And I think what's interesting again with that is when we talked earlier about consideration around the change. How do you change? What do you need to change? How do you think differently? If you look at the SMAX stuff, which is great, I'm really interested in SMAX, the innovation the Micro Focus are bringing, developing, incorporating intent-based smart virtual agents, the marketplace, all that stuff. So if you look at developing that service catalog in relation to what we discussed, at what point does the intent become part of that whole process? At what point would you look at what is an intent in relation to the service catalog, and then how would you go around trying to design that? Does that make sense when you're looking at that virtual situation where the touch point between the user and the service provider, the support has changed?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. So I think the way that we look at it, certainly from our product's perspective, is, you know, there are things where you can kind of guess. So, you know, the examples I gave there, where I'm moving house and I need to update my details. There are some pretty common ones. And actually, when it comes down to the attempts, to me, the key thing is getting the catalog entry right. So thinking about the actual fulfillment of what you're going to do. So take that example of the moving hat, changing my contact details. That could start out as just a very manual process. It could be like almost like a 5-step process that says, you know, go update this one system, put the details in there, then go to the HR system, do the update there, maybe send an email to a specific person for them to do something, and then obviously update the users to make them aware. Now, what you can then do is you can kind of take it, go back to what I said a moment ago, you can then take each of those individual elements and go, right, well, that one where it's update this other system, we've already got an integration in the business that can handle that. So let's hook into that and we can automate that step. And that gets you to that point where you're automating. Now, with what we're doing with our virtual agent, what that means is as those tickets are coming through, Max is actually learning the intents of what's being asked. So, you know, it might be just a case of I want to update my contact information, but he also then understands, because the algorithms and the previous requests that are getting generated are being put in there automatically as part of that training. So we're kind of taking the pain away from doing that for you with Max. Obviously, you can look to extend that more based on the tickets that get raised, but it's kind of, you know, we're trying to help avoid that extra step that you might need to with other tools or other technologies.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think what I'm alluding to there as well, because I think we're all learning, certainly from my perspective. You know, I've come out of practitioner land some 5 years ago now, almost 6, and the things have changed so dramatically, you know, from the old to the new. So if you're looking at that intent thing, if you look at the way the service desk is set up and what it does now, and the knowledge that it holds in relation to the user's experience and an outcome, I'm really interested in what skills a service desk will need to move that sort of shift left thing more into the experience management and the management, maybe low code stuff, in relation to intents and the user expectation over a year, because it's a seasonal demand and change as well. So I'm really interested if you guys have seen anything in relation to the service desk changing skill sets to support some of this stuff directly, or is that a bit too early?
I guess certainly from our experience, having that sort of focus on how the service catalog is actually being used, and I guess one of the things right at the outset as well is, you know, like the old Covey kind of, you know, begin with the end in mind. I mean, we heard Matt talking about, you know, multiple different definitions of what a service catalog actually is. So I guess you've got to be really clear on whether it's there to drive visibility of the service, you know, the business service portfolio, whether it's used more as a technical services catalog, or whether it's used more to drive kind of end user kind of self-service portal stuff, and it can do all of those. But I guess sometimes it's a bit difficult in the heat of lots of people all kind of throwing in requirements to be very clear about, you know, is there a prime focus? If not, what are the things we need to design into it? Because it ends up then with everybody making assumptions that it's going to do a job that they were expecting it to do, but in fact it doesn't. And I know certainly from a a self-service point of view. I mean, everyone had huge expectations of how successful self-service portals would be and how valuable shift left would be and so on. And in reality, I don't think the adoption of end user self-service has actually taken off as much as people were expecting it to.
I totally agree. And I think that's because it's just not smart enough. I think it's too linear, and looking at some of the technologies and assistive technologies to make it easier for I'm going to use the word user to use it, that should drive the right behaviors and take up, I think, anyway. But you're absolutely right. Last question, guys. We're going to maybe go over the 2 o'clock, but I want to ask this one because I'm really interested again about, if you look at the survey results that were shown earlier, number 7 and 9 on there were, what do you think AI is? Number 7 and 9 were predictive analytics and behavioral analytics. And I recently read a World Economic Forum report about the skills required and the growth in relation to technology over the next 3 years. And at the top of every sort of chart, user entity, big data, anomaly detection was the biggest thing from a skill set perspective and from a requirement for growth technology perspective as well. I just want to toy with that a little bit and listen to what you guys are seeing in relation to user entity, what it means, what it is, how that will change the way that services are provided as well. Maybe a bit of an open question, but maybe just your thoughts on what that actually means for organizations over the next 2 or 3 years.
So I suppose, I mean, when you talk about user entities, the first thing that popped into my head, right or wrong, is the idea of personas. We're seeing more and more people, more and more organizations, I guess, designing more around the realization that there isn't a kind of one size fits all kind of type of user. You've got people who are on the road a lot, you've got people who need sort of high levels of computation, you've got different people using technology to support different kinds of business use cases, and I think a lot of it comes back to data, at the end of it, because if you can't understand how successful or how unsuccessful those different personas are in terms of using business technology, or if you can't distinguish between one group of people complaining and another, I guess, to put it a bit more crudely, it's very difficult to actually make the engine work properly. So, and I think that's a real application. If you've got a broad and complete enough data set, you can really sort of dig into that and actually start to get some real sort of nuanced information about how businesses are actually using technology.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in on that one, guys? Their thoughts on that?
So I guess just to add on that, I think there's always been that little bit of joke about millennials and their approach to technology compared to the rest of us. I kind of sit just on the border, so I'm apparently classed as Gen X, so I can't class myself as a millennial, which is, I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing. But I think that takes a play into it. So if you look at I've spoken to people at things like at various conferences, and so. I don't want to say it's a generational thing, but some people want to talk to someone, right? They want to have a conversation with someone to basically help get across what their issue is or the problems they've got. Whereas, should we say, the more tech savvy people, and going back to what David mentioned there, is they just want to do the Google-like search, right? They just want to do that search, pull back the answer, solve it themselves. So I think from a service desk perspective and service support and delivery perspective, you've got to cater those different types of people, and whether that's a way of behavioral analytics, understanding the way that certain users interact with the service desk based on previous tickets, or whether it's making sure you've got the appropriate avenues. I think I remember going to a couple of conferences a few years ago, and there was this whole drive that everything's got to go to the portal. No one wants to phone the service desk. I disagree with that. I think you want to have as many channels as possible, but you want that experience to be this as the same capabilities, irrespective of the channel take. Be that chat, be that voice, be that through a web portal or an app or what have you. I think that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, and listening to all this, again, considering the change that an organisation and people need to make culturally to accept this and develop it, I think my fun question is, and before we go to break, does this mean that really IT, the people in IT, should become developers rather than operations? And that's an open-ended question, guys. And anybody, you can probably going to all say no, right? But if you look at those changes, what does that mean, you think, from a development and an operations perspective? The shift of skills between people to make this work in an organization.
I think from my perspective, I don't know about my distinguished colleagues, but I don't like support being treated as developers. I think that leads us down a very dodgy way. However, going back to the early comments around DevOps and the fact that, the dev side of DevOps have been able to embrace change and be more agile. I think that's what we need to look at from an operational perspective. Being able to utilize the capabilities we got. I always find it quite funny that a lot of organizations I've worked with, when it comes to management and change, the change management team are probably the most stubborn. And it's that kind of thing that we need to think and be more, adopt those agile type of approaches to things to help us move forward, so we can provide the benefit to the business. Because I think the other problem you get with that is you get into the world of shadow IT. So you get that situation where a line of business just goes out as a tool off the shelf, or suddenly they start using Dropbox within the organization when the corporate view is you're meant to use MS Teams or SharePoint or what have you. And I think that's where you get into the problem. So I think it's just, we need to, from an operations perspective, we just need to be more be able to be more reactive, but utilize what's around us as well.
Good. Okay. Anybody got anything to add to that? Maybe before we go into the break, guys, or are you good with that?
The only other thought that crossed my mind was that I think everybody wants everyone in the organisation to be as valuable a contributor as possible, and I think part of the problem kind of stems back from what I was saying in my presentation about just lack of data, and having to be reactive means that you have to throw lots and lots of resources into the trenches to deal with all of that stuff that should never have happened in the first place. If you can get ahead of that, then maybe not so much turning people into developers, but maybe following more of a business relationship kind of function, where you're actually you're actually using the service desk to have business conversations rather than apologize for things not working. Yeah. That's
a fair point, guys. Well, that was great to chat. Now we're going into a break, but depending on your day, guys, you're more than welcome to hang about. We'll have another Q&A a little bit later as well, so maybe we can extend that if you've got the time. If not, thank you for joining us today. Very, very, very much appreciated. So we're going to move into a well-earned break, I think is fair enough, to give everybody an opportunity maybe to grab a coffee or a tea before our next speakers. So please join us again in, almost just under 10 minutes now at 2:15 for the next presentation, which is the future of the service desk and automation with Amandip Minhas. Thank you very much, guys, presenters, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Service Intelligent event. Hopefully, many of you have been with us through today, which is great, and you would have learned some new stuff, and hopefully thought of what's understood what's coming around the corner potentially in some organizations. Maybe that's what we've got to look forward to over the next sort of hour or so. So I think we're gonna pretty much kick on, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we have got with us Amandip. Are you there, Amandip?
Yes, I'm there, David. How are you?
That's, we'd start very well, and it's good to speak again, actually. So yeah, we're delighted to welcome Amandip Minhas, who is Geography Delivery Head of Cloud and Infrastructure Services at Wipro. Previously, Amandip was the Global Head of Service Desk and End User Computing at Wipro, and has 20 years experience, and that also includes in time spent at IBM, Accenture, and Dell. So a big welcome to Amandip, and I think we'll be discussing the future of the service desk and automation. Always a very topical and sort of a very topical, thing, I suppose, especially these days. And of course, Wipro did very well at the IT Service and Support Awards finals at STS conference last year, and congratulations again on Wipro for winning the Best Automation Project Award. So we're going to hand over then, Amandip. So hopefully you've got your slides ready.
Yes, I have.
Brilliant. So if we can swap presenter, and then it'll be over to you. So if you could just sort of share your screen. Fantastic. And if you can just make
I'm
that.
just going to put it on presentation mode here. Perfect.
Thank you, Amandip. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. So, greeting everybody. So, thank you for having me here today. I have been introduced as someone who is working in Wipro. I've taken over a new role. So, I'm the geography head for infrastructure services and cloud services for Wipro. Before this role, I was heading service desk in Wipro, and I did that for about 3.5 years. It's been an exciting journey, and I will walk you through the things that we've done within service desk, and I will talk about how I perceive the service desk to change and to move, and how the future looks like. So in this chart today, I will talk about the future of service desk and how it's been riding on this term called automation, and how the AI kicks in and how it makes it all exciting. And that's why I'm calling this session as my impression and not really an expression, because this is more towards how I believe it'll change and how the future is going to come and hit us all. So I'll get started. A typical question is typically asked to me whenever I meet the customers. How do you see your service desk in 5 to 10 years? I will encourage each of you to ask the same question to yourself. How do you see your service desk to be in 5 to 10 years? Would it be the same as it is now? Would you see it changing with the changing times? Do you think a lot of new tools are going to come in, or would it change drastically? So that's an often question. So there are some 78 clients that I have for who we do service desk, and literally every CIO or CTO I have been meeting, they have been talking about the future. Everybody wants to know what's next, what's in the game, what are the new tools, what are the new automations you're bringing in. Not just the clients, there are a lot of partners who've been working with us who have also been, thinking and coming up with ideas of how we can do differently. So in my view, and this is purely my view, I think the future of service desk is going to look like this. And let me explain why. It's an empty office. We don't really have people doing service desk as we do today. It's going to change. And why it's going to change is because IT is now transforming. It's more like a commodity business. It's consumable for all of us. And we see the times changing. So, we have, it all started with, and we've all seen in our times how Apple came in and how Samsung has come in. They have phones which don't really have the provision to take out the battery. I remember when we all used to use the Nokia phones 10 years ago, we used to often reset the phone by taking off the battery and putting it back again. There were batteries available off the shelves that you can buy as accessories and get the phone working. There were a lot of little things that you could go and get serviced. But the transformation is coming that it's a commodity. Purchase it, use it, and throw it off. Likewise, we have the as a service model. So everything available as a service, right? From desktop as a service to laptop as a service. We've got infrastructure as a service, information as a service. So everything is like a pick and choose kind of a commodity. You take whatever you want, you take how much ever you want, and then consume it. And once it is done, just throw it off and buy the new set of services. Cloud is one classic example. I mean, we know the Google Cloud or the Azure or AWS and all. They have the end-to-end management of your data center in the cloud environment. But all they do is they will only charge you for the service. This is the space that you've procured from them. And they will provide the end-to-end optimization, application loading, server maintenance, and everything is part of the package. It's all service given. We've seen VDIs coming with the same thought. So VDIs are all consolidated central systems which are controlled centrally but locally managed. And every VDI system has its own central application which can get fixed once. And once fixed, it impacts all VDIs together. So there's no need for a person who's using a VDI laptop or a VDI desktop to call for an application issue or to call for an issue which is very specific to that domain, unless there's a hardware failure. BYOD is again a big thing. Get coming up with your own devices. If you have your own tab, you have your own laptop, bring it to work, you can access everything that you have personally, but at the same time you have everything which the office gives you. OneDrive, Google Drive, they've completely eliminated the storage. In Wipro, I use OneDrive as my official storage. There's nothing on my laptop. Tomorrow, if my laptop crashes, I have nothing to lose. Everything is available on the internet. All I need is another replacement PC, and I'll get every data that has been put up on OneDrive. So that's how it is transforming, because we have seen how the journey has been rapidly changing every month. I would not even say year over year. It's been changing every month when new products come in, new technology comes in, and that's what is changing the flavor. So this entire session, I want to talk about how our adoption has been and how the journey has been in terms of accepting, adopting, and accepting the change, which is more around what we can take in versus what has been given to us by the changing ecosystem. So I'll explain how that has transformed and how that has changed from a operability perspective. And this is more around the stuff that we've done in Wipro. And I'm sharing the version of what we have here as a capability that we've deployed in accounts. And all of this is currently operational. So this is nothing on concept. So here are some set of tools and automations that have helped us to automate about 45% of our workload, which is a huge story, because most of the automations that we typically see transform to about 15 to 20% at best. But combining all of them together, we have seen a massive result of about 45% automation throughout the accounts. So I'll start with each of them. I'll give you a quick view to how each of them have helped us to attain that. So the first one that we have is the endpoint analytics and resolution. So we've got these smart tools, which we've tied up with a lot of companies, and we've got our own tools as well, which is an engine which resides in every desktop within the environment, within the customer environment. And we have a central control system which will have access to the complete workspace of the office location. It can give us a view by geography. It can give us a view by the center. It can give us a view by the floor of the building. And we can have our data points about the health of the machines, health of the network, health of the storage capability, and any outages or any failed patches. All information is available to us on a single machine. All we need to do is we need to set a target of where we want to see us standing at. So if, say, out of 10, we expect us to score at least 8 to call ourselves healthy, we will do everything possible to make sure that every asset on the tool is featuring as green. There could be 1 or 2 failures, or maybe some failures which are non-failures, but anything which is working and operating should be up. So if you click on a floor, you can click on the bay of the floor, and you can go to the workstation specifically and double click on it, and you can see the complete asset listed in front of you, which will talk about its memory, it will talk about its OS, it will talk about its general health, the list of last 5-10 patches that have been deployed, any software conflicts, or any of that sort of thing, or if in case there is a password that is getting expired, or if anything which is a feature threat would also be shown there as an ammo. So all we have to do is centrally right-click, resolve, or right-click or deploy an alternate patch to fix the system, and the system turns green. This is one method which has really helped us to save a lot of future calls that would typically come to service desk, where we are able to resolve before the issue has occurred. So these are more concerns which potentially would turn into an issue, but we've been able to address it while it was a concern, so that the users get satisfaction. That's what our customers want. They want happy end users. They want users not to show concerns on service desk. They only want high capable service desk which will resolve and give them a high-end experience. The next one is the chatbot. We have chatbots that we've really enabled at an advanced level, and these chatbots I would define as resolution chatbots. So we've got chatbots that are how-to chatbots, which talks about what is that you can do to resolve an issue. The resolution chatbot helps us to perform the task. So if somebody wants a printer to be installed, all the person will have to do is type printer It will give you IVR option kind of flow on the chat. Press 1 for installation, press 2 for uninstallation, and so on. So you press 1, it will give you a list of printers available. You can choose 1, 2, 3 and get your printer installed. If you need a shared workspace or if you need a shared drive access, similar stuff can happen through these chatbots. Even password reset can happen with this chatbot. So which has really made life simple for end users, because in the current generation, a lot of users don't have time to be on the phone and be on the phone for 10 minutes to get their issue resolved. They have their own thing to go, so they continue to work. They have an issue, they will start chatting. Alongside their work, the chat is happening and their issue is getting resolved, which is a faster mechanism and an easy way that people are choosing to get into. We've also evolved a lot on Alexa and Google transformations. And Alexa is one proud deployment that we've done, where ServiceNow has an Alexa-enabled interface, which allows users to connect that to the IVR for a straight status ticket check, for issue creation and modification of issues. These are standard interfaces that are ServiceNow interfaces. Beyond this, we've also developed password interfaces and printer interfaces with Alexa, where there's no agent on the Wipro side. All the user will have to do is go to the IVR, select a reset option. The call automatically is answered by Alexa. Alexa will ask questions around the username, will ask authentication questions around the date of birth or any secret question that has been defined. This is that it will reset the password and immediately send it to the user. So that has enabled us to really cut off some manpower because we are aiming to become as humanless as possible to derive and to work on the service solutions. So that has really helped us to evolve and come forward with new age technologies. And I'm sure you guys would have seen some of the promos that Google had also launched around how the interactions have been around the hotel reservation or a dentist appointment or a haircut appointment and all. So those are ready solutions that are available, but Service Desk is something which we have developed from our own capability and learning, and that's really helping us and go forward. There's another good bot that we have, which is called the classifier bot. So classifier bot classifies the ticket basis the articulation of the issue. So if somebody has a issue with database and if somebody raises a ticket saying that the database is corrupt or a database issue is happening because of which the system is not working, it will pick up the word database and it will automatically redirect that ticket to the database team without any need for a service desk to come in between. Typically, what happens is when a ticket is made by service desk, then service desk attempts to resolve and sends it to a level 2 team. Or in case if it's a web ticket or an email, then service desk picks up and makes it into an email, into a ticket, and then sends it forward to the level 2 team. All that gets bypassed because then the classifier bot will make sure that this level 2 team comes to level 1. And it will be the first one to interact with the user and resolve the ticket. So this really saves us a lot of time as a process. We've got callback automated. So most of the callbacks we do through an outbound dialer, which has an automatic response saying that you wanted us to call you back. I hope your issue has been resolved. If there's an issue, you can press 1. If there is no issue, you can give us a feedback. So people who want service desk to be contacted again, they will press 1 and the call will get thrown back to an agent who will manually respond back. But most of these callbacks, which are more around confirmation of issue resolution, they are done by the system by itself. This itself used to take about 20 to 30% of our volumes in the past, which has now almost gone to 0. We've got smart IVR-based routings. We've got IVR-based CSATs that we are doing, which is, again, real-time CSAT collection. It's not dated, it's current. So whatever the user gives us today, I will be able to make sure that we can reach back to the user to correct whatever went wrong, or if any feedback has to be given to the agent about the issue that the person resolved today, will reach the agent today. So there's no dated feedback or a dated method for us to reach to the users. So we're more current and active. We have the VIP app, which again is a smart solution, which enables a lot of users, especially the VIP users, to on their phone, if they have this app, they have to press a button. This button typically triggers an alarm to the field engineer or the desk side engineer in that location with the cabin number or the asset number from where the alarm has come from, and the field engineer immediately reaches out to the VIP without any attempt to call the service desk. It's more personalized service, more ask from our financial customers who need things to be sorted on priority, but really helps us to win a lot of mileage because the users give a very positive feedback on the response to this VIP app. They don't really have to call anybody. All they have to do is press a button and the person appears to resolve the issue. We have the alert manager, again a very smart tool. It picks up the emails that have been sent to a mailbox and it automatically makes that into a ticket. What we typically do is we combine alert manager with the classifier bot that I explained in the past. So if a user is sending an email for MS Office installation, it will not reach the service desk. All the user has to do is make a email, send it to the mailbox. Mailbox will make a ticket by itself. Ticket will automatically get routed through the classifier bot to the application installation team, and the application installation team directly reaches out to the user. So the complete level 1 has been bypassed because that's not what level 1 will do. They will only do a postman's job of forwarding the ticket from level 1 to level 2. So this saves us a huge effort and time because we've been able to eliminate the time wasted because of the hops. All our passwords are reset. So we've got voice-based password resets, we've got text-based password resets, and the tool-based password resets. So most password resets are done through automation. We don't really have any calls that come us for resetting the password. We've got smart walk-in centers, which make sure that we have some inventory of assets available. So any person who has a laptop issue, the person will come with a broken laptop, immediately gets a replacement or a handy standby machine, and the person walks away with a working machine. We will take our own time to get it repaired, replaced, or if needed, if it can be fixed the same day and returned back, we can do that as well. But it's a very easy way. If you have your own inventory, we just take the damaged machine, give a fresh machine to the user. User operates as normal, and whenever the old machine gets fixed, we can either call the user back, or if the replacement machine is the machine to be, then the user keeps the new machine. So that helps us to streamline this piece as well. The last one, again, very exciting, is the social service desk. This is a new term. I'm not sure if I should call it new, but I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about it. It's a new ask that is coming to us from a lot of customers where they want social service desk to be managed by Wipro. So when I say social, they will keep a Yammer page or some social interaction page with running issues. More handy around migration periods. So somebody who's migrating to a Windows 10 or somebody who's migrating to a new platform or maybe deployment of O365, they will let user exchange messages and share their experiences. Wipro plays a moderator's role, and we typically guide them on the right conversations. So if somebody is struggling to understand how to operate, or if somebody has a how-to question, the administrator from Wipro would start giving out easy articles that this is what you can refer to, this is the way to move forward, here are the 10 things that you can do to resolve your issue. And we're able to guide a lot of users with this reference. Has been a huge win because a lot of users find it very helpful, and we often see a lot of users also acting up as service desk because some smart users who understand the way of operating, they also start helping and guiding other users. So that's also working extremely well for us. So just a bundle of tools that we've been able to deploy. Success story has helped us to do a lot and achieve a lot, and has been able to transform a lot. But again, as I said, this is just the beginning. It's not really the future yet, but these things are practically available today that we've been able to develop. And I'm sure there are many more that you're aware of, but I thought I'll probably share this with you. Where does this take us? Well, this takes us to first problem elimination. That's the purpose of service desk, that we should not really have a reason to keep level 1 at service desk. So we typically provide solutions in such a way that smarter technology should come in. The reason for people to call the service desk should not be there, and service desk should not be doing the level 1 resolution, but there are other complex tasks that service desk should do, and I'll come to that of what I believe that service desk should be doing in future. There should be a central control and switch to fix problems, as I had explained, that there should be a central control to get complete view to all assets, more like a directory of services, and then everything can be remotely sorted and fixed. We have to move to a no repair environment, just replace, and that's the new fix. Everything should be plug and play. Applications and data points should be hosted, should not be localized on the computers. And we have to move from a resolution-based to experience-based outputs. So we should, the way we are typically gauged on the effectiveness of resolution, we should not be gauged on the effectiveness. We should be gauged on the overall experience of how they felt that the issue was addressed. And that's the maturity that we all need to move to. So does this kill the service desk? No, it does not kill the service desk. This doesn't mean that the service desk would not exist. But what it does is that it takes service desk to a higher chain in the complete value chain. So in the infrastructure services space, when we look at service desk, it's more like freshers coming in or people with less experience coming in who want to make an IT career. They spend few years in service desk and they graduate to pick up more complex responsibilities. But with us adopting technologies and smart ways of resolution, I believe that the service desk is capable to do more. And here is some of the things that we are already doing in Wipro. Service desk, while we have a SIAM team, but service desk is still the end-to-end owner for ticket lifecycle within the account. So SIAM team still works on areas and domains where teams outside of Wipro are required. But within Wipro's control, any ticket that is opened up is a service responsibility. And I think that's what needs to mature, where service desk should own up the responsibility going to the extent of SIAM, so that they have a complete view to any ticket that gets opened, and the resolution that has been provided, and how did it get closed or how effectively it got closed. Service desk should also do persona-based skill mapping. This is based on the end user's portfolio who's calling the service desk. So if you're serving a pharma company where you know that somebody from the lab is calling, the requirement will be different and critical for the person. If somebody has called up from say a finance company or somebody like a stockbroker has called, the person is extremely critical because this person is maintaining live stocks and needs the issue to get resolved. Somebody who's a doctor who's calling for something which is extremely urgent for him to do, that is a different kind of speed and clarity which is required. So skill-based routing is extremely important, and persona-based service is very, very critical for services to understand based on several customers that services typically supports. Service desk should also observe ticket behaviors on how tickets behave during the seasons, during holidays, during events, during outages, during rollouts, because this is one behavior that should go back to the customer on how the volumes have been varying and what are the forecasting methodologies that we need to bring in or change from time to time. The ticket optimization has to be done right. The routing has to be done right. All new groups that get formed, if it is connected to the classifier bot, or there are new groups that we have brought in from a resolution angle perspective, they have to get updated with the right knowledge article. I also strongly believe that service desk metrics should be upgraded, and we need to be looking at more smarter metrics like the ticket hops, and again something that we are following in Wipro. While we have the ASA, abandon, FCR, CSAT metrics that are standard contractual metrics, I think the health of service desk is measured, and this is how the customers typically see, is that you should have ticket hops which should be less than 3. If anything that is causing the tickets to hop more than 3 times, we need to investigate into the process and maybe work with the customer to optimize or streamline that. Backlog, in my view, as an average, less than 5% is okay, but it's best in class to be less than 2%. And we've been able to do that for most of our customers, where we are fairly active by these bots, where we don't really have tickets pending or standing open for resolution. So that gets addressed with the backlog focus. And of course, the third one should be CSAT, because that's why the customers come to us for. They want us to make sure that every user is satisfied, every resolution that is provided to the best ability. So that's the end. And when you say when the future is, I would say future is today. And that's why most of these thoughts that I've shared are some things that we have already deployed. We have this functional, things are working. We're definitely hungry for more. We are looking for more options, more tools that we can buy, more tools that we can develop. But the future is there today. So that's what the message that I wanted to pass to each of you.
Excellent.
So
thank you
very
much.
David.
Thank you, Amandip. That's some really cool stuff there. I'm sure an awful lot of individuals and organisations will be very interested to see, what Wipro are doing with their service and how they're changing and improving that. Now, hopefully, Amandip, I know you're a busy guy. If you've got the opportunity to stay with us, that would be great, because we've got another Q&A session a little bit later. So if you have, brilliant, but thank you very much indeed for that presentation. Yeah, we're going to move on. No problem at all. Thank you, Amandip. So we'll move on, guys, and yeah, we're delighted to welcome Katie Gibbs, and Katie is head of AI at BJSS, and Katie has spent the majority of her career working in AI. So it's really great to have her join us to talk about the future, the workplace of the future, and future-proofing an organisation. Welcome, Katie. Hopefully, you're there.
Yes. Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. I was interested why you picked this topic today. Maybe before we start, Katie, why did you pick the topic?
To be honest, I think I picked it out of sheer frustration about being asked about what the future of work looks like with AI on almost a daily basis.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of doom and gloom around what AI means for people in the workplace and their roles within organizations. And actually what I'd like to present today is a bit more of an optimistic view for what that future could look like and how you can enable this transformation of AI whilst kind of maximizing the value that you get from your employees as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure everyone will be interested in that, because it's certainly one of the key considerations as we rush headlong into the fourth industrial revolution, what's going to happen to skills and people. So thank you very much. Hopefully you've got your slides ready, Katie, to share. I
do, however, I can't see how to share them. So
we'll be prompted, it's okay. We're just going to prompt. I should see there we are. So if you can just give that a click, thank you, and just open up that so it's full screen, and away we go.
1 second. Sorry, it keeps pausing.
That's okay, no worries at all.
Can you see that now?
I think we've still got yeah, if you could just try and share your screen again. There we are. That's fantastic. That looks perfect, actually. Okay, so over to you.
Thank you. So thank you for the introduction. As you mentioned, I'm Katie Gibbs. I'm head of AI at BJSS. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a business and technology consultancy company. We've been around for over 26 years. We've got presence around most cities in the UK, as well as 2 in the US. And I actually only joined a few months ago because BJSS has got a really strong delivery capability and a really strong reputation in that area. And we wanted to see how we could use AI in order to enable AI delivery across the organisation and for our clients, because we're seeing so many clients get caught in kind of proof of concepts and prototype loops. We're really kind of looking at how we can leverage our expertise in delivery in order to enable long-term adoption. And as I mentioned, I'm really interested to talk around AI and the future of work, because I get asked a lot about what the impact is for people's jobs. And I often, in talking to people, they say, oh, you know, it's all doom and gloom. It's really, I'm really quite concerned about what this means for me and my role. And I think actually that the workforce have a say in this. I think they've got a say in what the future can look like, and they can help shape it. But it's only if we adopt the right kind of mechanism for delivering AI. So I guess before I jump in, I'm hoping this works. There we go. I just thought it's really important right at the start to differentiate what I mean when I'm talking about artificial intelligence. I'm not going to be talking about general AI, a system that kind of possesses cognitive abilities similar to a human, that it can actually do things better than us. That's not the sort of AI that I tend to work with. When I talk about artificial intelligence, I'm talking about narrow AI, something that an AI system can do one thing really well. And it's very much a specialized task, such as when you're on Spotify and it's recommending a playlist, all the way through to kind of using one machine learning algorithm to forecast customer demand. And you know, one of the reasons I want to differentiate between these two is because when people tend to talk about AI taking over jobs, actually we're talking, you know, we tend to get a bit confused about which type of AI we're talking about. And we need to be clear that we aren't talking about general artificial intelligence when we're talking about this space. And unfortunately, our friends in the media aren't doing us many favors. There's headlines such as this from our friends at the Daily Mail: doomsday AI will cause a nuclear war by 2040 that could destroy humanity, and there may be no way to prevent it. I just wanted to share this because I think that it's important to understand that there is an environment of fear around artificial intelligence that the media is contributing towards. The media certainly has a responsibility for creating this kind of fearful atmosphere. But you know, when people are reading these sorts of stories, you can completely appreciate why they do feel this sense of unease around artificial intelligence, and some confusion around what it means for them. You know, when we're talking about AI potentially taking over people's jobs, they probably are picturing the Terminator, unfortunately, because it tends to be a photo that associates a lot of the media headlines at the moment. And there's a few stats that get bandied around that don't particularly help the conversations in this area. One of them being that 80% of IT jobs will be replaced by AI. PwC actually estimates that robots will be able to perform up to 30% of jobs by 2030. So, you know, again, it's really understanding the wider ecosystem as to why people are getting quite concerned and alarmed around what AI means for, you know, their place in the workforce. And I think it's important when we're talking around the future of work and what it means for AI that we appreciate this element of fear. And a lot of that fear is caused by this confusion around what artificial intelligence is and people's lack of understanding about what it means for their role. I'm just looking at some of the research that Oxford University did last year. They pulled together a very long list of jobs which were most likely to be automated, and they picked this long list of jobs based on jobs that require very repeatable tasks, because they saw it as being possible to replicate these tasks through kind of machine learning and automated processes. And I just wanted to call out this small selection here. So kind of insurance underwriters, telemarketers, policy processing clerks, telephone operators, particularly kind of office clerks and receptionists, because I can understand why they've selected these roles. I can understand that, you know, if you are taking a 1,000-foot view of what these roles encapsulate, you can understand that there are a lot of kind of repetitive tasks within that role. But these roles also require human skills in order to do it really well. So, you know, let's take a receptionist. If you are walking into a building to attend a meeting with you know, business partner, clients, whoever it might be, it is a much better user experience if you're greeted by someone who can help you, who can engage with you, who can empathize with you, rather than just logging your details into a system and trying to find your way around. And you know, similarly with kind of telephone operators, there are certain, we mentioned it in the Q&A earlier, there's certain people within the customer base who will always prefer to speak to a human on the phone. And that's because they're after someone who can empathise with them and understand how they can best help you. And even though we increasingly using chatbots, virtual assistants in customer service, in the customer service world, there's still an element of human escalation where actually the virtual agent can't address a particular concern, or a customer doesn't feel that their needs are being met. So they will want to get through to a human in order to talk to them on the phone. So I think it's kind of important to take some of these things with a bit of a pinch of salt. And certainly the way that I've been working in the AI market for the last 5+ years is talk about artificial intelligence as intelligence augmentation. So really thinking about how we can design artificial intelligence to augment people in the workplace. And it's for this reason that I'd like to offer a slightly more hopeful view of what the future of the workforce will look like. And actually, I'd encourage us to flip this fear around AI taking jobs actually into an opportunity statement. I don't think that this should be a problem statement. I think there's a real opportunity for us to think about how we can improve AI by combining it with human skills. And that's because I don't believe that you can divorce technology from the end users. At the moment, companies are investing an awful lot of money in artificial intelligence. A lot of the companies I'm speaking to aren't seeing the expected results that they need to achieve a return on investment. And this is because they keep getting stuck in proof of concept loops, which I mentioned at the start when David asked me about why I picked this topic. It's a lot of these organizations are experimenting with AI systems actually for the wrong reasons, because they want to see what's technically feasible, what's technically possible. And a lot of them actually, a real driver for them is in order to cut heads within the organization to save on costs. But there's a bigger picture here when you're thinking about how artificial intelligence is being used. And we should be thinking about what the impact is on the customer experience and actually the user experience, the people in the back office who might be engaging with these systems. So I'd like to flip the statistic I showed earlier. I actually see this as 80% of IT jobs that need to be adapted due to AI. I think this is a real opportunity to upskill your workforce in order to get maximum value out of AI and to enable efficiencies in the back office, but also to enable excellent customer service. And as I said, this is really because I don't believe you can divorce the human element from the technology. So when we work with clients to design and deliver AI solutions, we really focus on how we can combine the technical innovation of artificial intelligence with human-centered design. And that's because we see that as the only way to enable transformation and growth across the entire organization for the workforce, but also for the end users and for all those customers. And I've seen a very large number of AI solutions fail, and it tends to be because the end users and customers haven't been considered the whole way through. A lot of companies tend to experiment, develop a pilot with their technical teams, and then kind of get it out to end users to get their feedback. And they'll find actually that they've automated something that doesn't drive value for the end users, so they're not going to engage. And there's very much a sense of the tech people build it and then throw it over the wall to the end users. And that just doesn't work. It hasn't worked in my experience of seeing how people are working with artificial intelligence. So I think it's really important that we focus on the user experience in order for an organization to reap long-term benefits from artificial intelligence. So I wanted to share an example to just bring this to life. I spoke to a bank about this time last year. It was just an open conversation about what they were doing in the AI space. And they shared that they had invested in over 125 AI proof of concepts across the organization. And none of them had gone into production. And actually a lot of them were siloed into different departments. So it was very difficult for them to think about what their longer term AI strategy could be and how they could reap the kind of benefits of the investment they've already put into AI and take some of these systems into production. And the reason that they got stuck in this proof of concept loop was because they didn't include the end users, even when it was involving kind of back office AI solutions. So when they handed over a system for example, to their HR department to see if this AI solution would drive efficiencies for them. The end users wouldn't use it because they didn't see how it added value for them. And that's why I really think that end users have an opportunity to shape what the future of the workforce looks like and how we can engage with artificial intelligence. But more importantly, those end users, especially if they're employees within the organization, they will not see how that company is investing in them. So they will take a stand to say, well, actually, it seems like you're automating a large proportion of my job. The simple solution is for me to not engage with this process, and we'll keep doing things the way that we've always done it. And what I've seen companies do in order to combat this is focus on hiring AI specialists to run these in-house AI systems. And these AI specialists tend to be very expensive, and companies don't tend to have a clear view of what it is they're asking them to do. They're not clear of the skills required. They just know, okay, if we're looking at using AI in order to cut headcount, then we're going to need someone in order to run these systems, to manage and maintain the technology. So not only are companies paying over the odds for these AI specialists without having a clear remit for what their job is, but this also results in a really difficult working environment where existing employees feel incredibly disengaged because their input isn't required in this design and delivery of AI solutions, and it certainly isn't being valued. And I think when we take a step back and think about what that means for an organization, a lot of people say, well, we'll reduce headcount, we'll get someone in to run these AI systems, it will kind of, it's a win-win. But actually, if you've got a disengaged workforce, especially if they're starting to see other members of their teams being pushed out of the business in order to adopt AI systems, that's going to change the way they interact with end customers, because they're going to be disengaged. They're going to be distrustful of the way that the organization is treating them. That will come across in the way that they deal with the customers and the customer experience. So it will impact the bottom line. So I guess if there's one thing I'd like people to take away from my talk today, is that AI cannot succeed on its own, and it certainly should not be AI for the sake of AI. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all your problems. But most importantly, it actually requires human skills in order to be the most effective, in order to be impactful and to drive value for your organization. And this is a real shift from how people have been using AI over the last few years. I think a lot of organizations, particularly ones who are engaging with RPA products, they tend to look at automation as a way to reduce headcount, because RPA products are using headcount reduction as their business case. So they'll say, well, it's X amount for a license fee, but we will cut Y number of people, we'll cut entire teams in order for you to get a return on investment. And actually what we're seeing is that clients can't fully automate their entire teams. So they don't achieve that return on investment on these RPA products in particular. And it's because they've realized that they still need a degree of human interaction. They can't automate an entire service because they require a certain degree of human empathy and human intelligence. So I'd encourage you to not just see AI as a way of cutting costs, but instead to be more output focused, to think about what the bigger picture is and what your bigger vision can be for artificial intelligence within your company, which should include customer experience. How we're going to be interacting with customers, how does it inform the way that customer service engages with people, all the way through to your company culture, how your employees feel valued within the organization, and investing in your workforce. So a lot of the time when I speak to people around what they need to be successful with an AI delivery project, they say, oh, well, we don't have the right technical capabilities. And I think there's a bit of a myth around the fact that you need to be technical to work in artificial intelligence. And yes, you need a certain degree, like if you're working in the data space modeling machine learning algorithms, you will need data scientists, you will need data engineers. But I think that there's a much bigger picture here. If AI solutions are going to be successful, then you do need a wider team wrapping around this in order to ensure that it's designed and delivered in the optimal way. So I think as long as you've got people who are fast learners, have problem-solving skills, and always think about what the bigger picture is for how AI can drive value, then there's a real business case for involving a wider group of people across the organization in your AI projects. So really kind of pushing back on this idea of technical teams driving AI projects, and instead setting up diverse teams in order to ensure that you can design and deliver the optimal AI solution for your business. So I wanted to share our high-level AI journey that we take clients through, because actually we don't tend to use that many technical people, so I thought this was just a nice way of bringing this to life. At the define stage, this is all about kind of art of the possible, understanding what the high value use cases are for AI. So rather than saying let's have a chatbot or let's have a machine learning algorithm, really understand what is it we're trying to achieve with AI, what does it mean for the wider business, the way we engage with customers. And this is where we tend to focus much more on kind of design thinking skill sets. So engaging with user researchers, user experience designers and service designers to understand not just how AI can address pain points and opportunities in user journeys, but also looking at kind of a wider impact of what that means across the business. And then once you've kind of mapped out all these different areas where AI can potentially drive value, it's then going to design to build a user-centric prototype, at which point you'll need a product owner who can own the vision for what that solution should be. You still need a user experience designer to really think about how users are going to engage with this, and engaging with the end users throughout in order to ensure that they're feeding into this, including the service designer to map out in more detail the wraparound service, having a business analyst to identify all the technical requirements and the business requirements for to establish what good looks like for the AI solution, and having a technical architect who can kind of bring together what technical design is of that AI solution. And then depending on the type of AI that you're using, you'll potentially start engaging kind of data engineer, data scientist, or a conversational designer at this point to help bring the prototype to life. But then when you go into deliver and scale is the key one here, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the deliver phase because there's a lot of obstacles that get put in the way. You need kind of similar skill sets. Normally you need some sort of front-end developer and back-end developer, integration developer to ensure that AI systems speaking to your other internal systems. You will need a tester, and there's no reason why that can't be a tester that you use in any other project, because we've got a clear understanding of what good looks like from the work that the business analyst has been doing. And then kind of again, these AI specific skills would be kind of data engineer, data scientist, machine learning engineer, and conversational designer. And I think one of the key ones here is actually learning and development. In order to scale an AI solution across an organization, I think that there has to be an element of learning and development across the business in order to ensure that you can take on the management and maintenance of that solution in-house rather than relying on third parties. And the key thing here is at every step in this journey, we need users with business knowledge. We need to interact with the people who are running these processes day to day, interacting with customers on a day-to-day basis, so that we can understand not only what the pain points and opportunities are, but bring them on board the whole way through, ensure that they're providing feedback throughout the design and deliver stage, and helping us scale the AI solution by being a champion for the AI system, and actually helping engage people around the business by saying, I'm not afraid of what this technology means for my role, because I've been engaged from day one. I really understand what it is and the benefits it's going to bring to me. So we really kind of engage with a range of end users, and we collaborate in order to co-design and co-develop these solutions. And the reason that we have such a strong focus on engaging the end users is because of the employee value proposition. I think it's really crucial that you consider the impact of your employee value proposition when you start engaging in AI. And these kind of called outs on this diagram here are the key things that people look for when joining a company and when deciding whether to stay at that company in the long term. So when we look at people, if they start seeing that you're cutting heads and there's this mass exodus because you're starting to automate jobs, then this is really going to impact the wider atmosphere and the drivers to actually come into work and do the best job possible. Learning and development, if you're focused on how you can upskill people in artificial intelligence, then it really clearly shows that you're investing in them for the future of the company, and really putting their needs at the forefront. And again, that's kind of really focusing on how you can help employees overcome that fear of what AI brings. Values, I think a lot of the time some of the work people are doing in the automation space actually conflicts with company values, because they're not being very transparent about what's going on, and actually it breeds a lot of mistrust. So if you're being transparent around what AI means for you, and what your AI journey looks like, then you can ensure that your values stay at the heart of that journey. And when looking at kind of work routines, practices, people often talk about around the future of the workforce, still around people having less monotonous jobs to do, so that they can focus on things that are more interesting, require the human skills. And I think that's a really important way of engaging the workforce, to get them interested in working in the AI space and say, how can we help you to perform your job better? How can we take away some of the kind of menial jobs that you potentially don't want to do, so we can better use your skill set elsewhere? And finally, the wow factor. I think working side by side with AI drives value for both the company and for the customers, and that's a real differentiator from other companies. It makes you stand out in your commitment to excellent experiences for both employees and customers, and I really don't think that the value of this can be overlooked. So I guess I've talked a lot about the, my opinion on where the value lies in upskilling your internal resources, how to take them on that journey with you. But we can't underestimate that this does require a bit of an educational revolution. We need companies to start encourage lifelong learning. A lot of people tend to see it as a one-off life event, or it's kind of when they're in between roles, or looking at completely kind of transitioning into a different industry or a new role. And we need employers to start focusing on the ways they can upskill their employees in this area. And this is really in order to make the most out of employees' knowledge and the wider context they have of the business, rather than just replace them with technical capability. And for me, this is actually about democratizing the understanding of artificial intelligence, so that we can include a greater proportion of people in the discussions around what the future may hold, and how they get involved in the design and build of AI systems, so that these AI systems work for everyone, rather than kind of being designed in a bit of a technical bubble. The challenge we often have when talking about kind of upskilling and training the workforce is the cost and time that's required. And this is an excuse that I very often hear. So I want to show you some free resources that are available. The University of Helsinki created an Introduction to AI course, which is aimed at business people. And actually they developed it with the aim of democratizing AI across the workforce in Helsinki. And they were amazed at the amount of interest they got from around the world. And it's because there's not many free resources available. There certainly weren't when it launched. It's a really good starting point if you want your employees to start getting an understanding of what AI is, what it means for them. And then in Coursera, you've got a bit more of a range of courses available. So you've got an Introduction to AI, which again is quite business oriented, but does touch on the different kind of technical, different AI technologies. But you've also got technical deep dives. So if you have got data engineers that want to upskill to be data scientists, then this is a good place to start to kind of validate their interest in that area. But I think it's also important to say that there's courses on on design thinking as well, because that's the approach that we take when designing AI solutions, is to ensure that we're constantly thinking about what the user wants and how it's going to drive value for them. And there's also one on data science and ethics, if that's of interest. And this is something that we've got people within our organisation taking these courses. They tend to be a couple of hours a week for 4 to 5 weeks, so it's not a huge amount of time required. And the other thing that we do is when we're working with client teams on designing and delivering AI solutions, is we upskill them as we go, so we share our knowledge, because we really truly believe that that's the best way to work with AI solutions. So before I run out of time, I really wanted to touch on how this impacts the operating model, because if you are delivering AI solutions into production and are scaling them across the organization, then you probably do need to consider how it impacts these 5 areas within your business. We've touched upon kind of people's and skills required, and happy to go on that training journey. But there's also culture, and I think this is a really important thing for companies to focus on to ensure there isn't a culture of fear when it comes to using AI. And this is where the employee value proposition plays a really key role to ensure that you've got these champions within the organization that are pushing forward with the AI agenda, so it becomes this cultural transformation rather than just a technical transformation. We've got processes. Clearly AI could be used to enhance a lot of processes, but that's only going to work if we engage with the end users in order to understand the pain points, the opportunities, and to get their input throughout that automation process, and ensure we've got their oversight to validate that these processes are working as expected. In terms of tools and technologies, it's worth considering how to manage all these AI technologies as your technical estate grows and matures, to incorporate these AI tools, and how to ensure that you're continuously kind of training and testing them. So have a think about how you can utilize your existing technical teams in order to own these new tools and technologies. And finally, governance. How do you ensure that you're monitoring and managing the AI systems to ensure long-term value and even reliability? And this includes everything from creating documentation through to monitoring your ML algorithms. So I think it's important to look ahead when talking about how AI can drive value for your organization, to think about how can we ensure that this is something that drives value in the long term. And it's only by considering all these areas in the operating model that you can ensure long-term adoption. So that was a bit of a whirlwind visit around kind of my view of the future of the workforce, and I really hope that I've instilled a bit more optimism for what the future of the workforce will look like, because I really believe that we're at a crucial turning point where actually we have an ethical obligation to consider how we can combine human skills with AI to deliver optimal services and experiences, not just for customers, but actually for employees within organizations that are adopting AI. So if we don't engage with these end users who have this business knowledge throughout the AI journey, and instead focus on things like cutting costs and reducing headcounts, then we won't get the most value out of these AI systems, and we're unlikely to see organizations overcoming the proof of concept and the prototype loop that's impacted the industry over the last few years. So I will stop there on that note of optimism, hopefully.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, that was really interesting, and well, more than really interesting actually, because it's exactly the way that I consider how organisations need to approach the future. Exactly the same. And it's interesting, I've done a lot of research into this, and when you talk about that ethical thing of being in an organisation as new technologies taken on board, the loss of brain power through just seeing it as a cutting cost. And if you look at the softer skills and the social skills that we need as we move into the next sort of industrial revolution, what they really mean for organizations when you talk about lifelong learning, it's really, really interesting stuff, and whether organizations can get their head around that. Couple of things I'll throw into that. There's a World Economic Forum report that was out, I think, the end of last year, and it talks about the next 4 years pretty much of what's going to happen, and it talks about the decline in 0.98 million jobs and a gain of 1.74 million jobs as a result of the change in technology. And it also said as well that 75 million jobs may be displaced, while 133 million roles may emerge more adapted to new division of labour, the labour between human machines and algorithms, which is really interesting. And that screams to me, we need to know what we need to learn. We need new skills. We need to be the same sort of vessels, if you like, with new skills that we'll need to understand very, very quickly. So that was really interesting. Thank you for that. Now we're going to open up to the floor to some questions. But what I thought, maybe we've got loads of people, loads of brilliant brains around the table, and maybe we haven't got a lot of time, but maybe just a sort of discussion around some of the points there. The first question, if I could, you made a fair point, and I've talked to people about this before myself, the confusion about AI, what it actually is. And my question is, certainly in IT and in the business and in personal life, how do we go about making it clearer what AI actually is? So I'll put that one in there. If anybody would like to maybe jump on that one.
I wish I knew the answer to it. It would save a lot of time. From my perspective, I think it's just about when we talk around, as organizations, adopting artificial intelligence, being very clear about what that means. We try and cut through the hype by talking about it as just another technology that drives value for your organization, rather than kind of adding to the hype. So we always try to kind of bring it back to what's the value it's going to drive, and kind of really clearly explaining what the AI technology can do. In terms of kind of getting the message out there to the wider general public, I think the media has a lot to answer for. And I think it's only as we see organizations taking their AI systems into production that we'll start to see a bit of a adaptation in the way the media talks around AI.
Yeah. Anybody want to add to that? I know that I spoke to a couple of guys in Micro Focus about this, and not only as part of a while back, actually, not only as part of what it means in an organization, but even in the software developers and the way that they were positioning what these things could do and were doing. So anybody, maybe, I don't know, Dean or anybody else like to add to that, maybe? Maybe Dean's left. Maybe he's left. But that's fine.
Hi, David. It's Dean. Sorry, I missed the question in the, as I rejoined back in.
From at all. The question was, Katie alluded to the fact that there's a confusion over what AI is. And I think it's a fair point, much of that media driven, but also an understanding that AI is this grey term that sort of touches so many different areas of what, what that practice is. Not really a practice, but it's a science, really, what that is. And my question was to Katie or everybody, how do we make that clearer? How do we better define what AI is so people understand it, aren't too worried about it, and actually start doing things to accept the new technologies into organizations and groups and cultures and stuff like that?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective on that, I think there's a couple of things. I think it's easy to brand something as AI in a similar kind of way. I certainly saw it myself over recent years, where everyone referred to everything as DevOps. When I'd walk into a customer and they'd say, "Okay, can I have the DevOps application, please?" When you know that obviously it's more about the processes and the procedures that you want to follow through and the methodology. And I think what we probably need to do is we need to look at how we break that down a little bit and sort of like chip away and kind of as been alluded to by myself and a few others, about how we can kind of bring in some of that capability, under the branding of things like machine learning or some of the other terms that we use, so that we're showing people how useful it actually is to do their day-to-day work. So if you look at it from a service desk perspective, if I'm working in change management, I want to be able to use the analytics to be able to tell me the success of change. So how do I, and it's simple things by that, by just nudging things forward bit by bit, I think is probably how we'll get the better message. I mean, obviously we're always going to have the sensationalism of media no matter what anyway, so.
Well, you're absolutely right, and you're absolutely right what you said. For me, these are really assistive technologies. If you see that the way that they will support the human, us, to be more effective and more efficient, it's about that for me. It's about assistive. It's about assistive support. It's about being an end user with an ecosystem of assistive technologies around it to make my life a lot easier, and better. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add. I mean, if you look at the situation around driverless cars, it's a similar kind of concept in that world. And actually, if you look at most of the car manufacturers, they have added, should we say, what you could argue is branded as AI into the standard cars that you buy today, that help you with things like the sensors that automatically start your window wipers whilst when it rains, or the lane maneuvering type things with the alarms that tell you that you've wandered out of your lane. So it's those kind of things that help move us forward to eventually get to the point that hopefully, we can have driverless cars.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question from, if you don't mind, guys, we've got a question from one of our listeners, Richard. Richard says, how do we see AI impacting service design and early life support for new services? Any experiences there, guys, or any thoughts? It's open to anyone, guys.
So we've actually been doing quite a lot to change the way we use service design around artificial intelligence. Namely, actually, typically with design thinking, you're going to do a lot of user research, do a service blueprint, and there's a certain there's a lot of assumptions that you're making and then validating throughout the journey. So we're actually looking at how we can use machine learning to have data-driven design thinking up front in order to inform the process we go through of service design, so that rather than creating personas that we then go out and validate through research, we actually look at the data, we look at the pain points, we look at the kind of sentiment analysis in order to inform which services we should be focusing on designing, and then going out to kind of research it around the data rather than around the assumptions.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. Anybody want to add to that from Katie?
Only that. I mean, I totally agree. I think the fact that we've now got technologies that can help us to actually do things like pattern matching and trends, changes in the way that applications are used over time, might help us to find the kind of hotspots, especially if there's a kind of a standard model. If there's an expected way of using an application, then yes, having a huge database that then lets us basically look at the gaps between expected use and actual use means that we can much more accurately steer the way that we do our service improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you read about the proactiveness behind that and the technology being trusted to make on-the-fly decisions to make processes better, it's a very exciting, I think personally, very exciting world that we're moving into. We've got, I think we've got about 5 minutes left, guys. So I'm gonna maybe throw out, maybe one last question, maybe. And briefly, if you could, guys, right? Maybe just a couple of either headlines, this is what I do, or two things, no more maybe. What would you advise companies that are just about to start on this AI journey to explore all this stuff? What would you say to them? Where should they start? What should they do first? Again, open to anyone.
I think a lot of it comes down to the way that we do a lot of things at the moment. I mean, if you want to focus AI on anything, it should be on the things that have got potentially the biggest impact. So in the same way as you've got kind of theory of constraint where you're sort of looking for the squeakiest wheel in the production line. I think that but potentially, I guess the thing with any new technology is you see it as something fantastic, and the danger is that you try and chase too many rabbits and you try and fix too many things with it. So I guess maybe the key thing initially is a bit of restraint, and make sure that you identify the one or two things at the top of the list and use that as the pilot rather than try and fix everything in one go.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about starting small, identifying where AI can add the most value for you, your customers, your organization, but also not to be overwhelmed by all the AI products out there. I think if you take a step back and think about how AI can drive value for you, it will help you kind of consolidate what it is you want to achieve, and it can then inform the conversations you have if you do start engaging with product providers.
I think I'd agree with what's been said as well. Definitely from my experience with implementing service management solutions, sometimes the hardest job is you look at it such as a huge activity to implement new products or processes. So being able to start small or look at something that may be a bit of a pain point within your organization, use that as a thing, and then obviously look to see what potential tools you may have inside your organization already to help you, or obviously look out there. You know, and if I'm allowed to say, you know, or obviously have a look at our product SMAX and see if that can help you as well.
It's a fair old market out there. So well, guys, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed today. Hopefully you have too, and hopefully our listeners have. I'd probably like to do this for the next 24 hours, maybe some weird long-term AI fest, but I don't think we'll be able to do that. So thank you for joining us, guys. It's much appreciated. We're going to make a close now, if that's okay. It's been really great, plenty of insights, I think, and hopefully that's given some brilliant food for thought and opened some avenues of exploration for our listeners. It's been a pleasure to be part of, as I mentioned. Thank you to Matt John, thank you to David Agostino, to Dean Clayton, to Amandip Minhas, and to Katie Gibbs for joining us today. And thank you again to our event partner, Micro Focus, for sponsoring this event. That's the last slide, a brilliant plug for where you can learn much more again and of the similar type of stuff that we've heard again next March. So if anybody of the listeners is interested in the SCI conference, SCI 20 next year, by all means, have a little look online and job done. Thank you to Holly and Emma at SCI for managing today's event. And finally, thank you to everybody, for you, the listeners, to taking the time to join us today. Good luck, and we'll speak to you very soon. Thank you very much indeed, guys. Thank you.